Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. A lot of updates going on here. Road to the world's proficiency test is a new thing that is giving rewards. And we'll look at that, and then we've got a feature ad in new card reports, which this is going to potentially drastically change how you play Yu-Gi-Oh! And push people in general just into playing the same options over and over again. Playing the same cards over and over again. Let's see if we can find it. It's probably a... Let's see, display card report, show. Yeah. Alright, we'll enable that on Duel, and by default it is enabled on replays anyways. So we can show that off without having to sit through a Duel live. But basically it tells you how often this card that was just played is played overall. So they're really just opening the floodgates to statistics that most game developers do have, particularly when you're talking online games, but almost never do they admit that they have it or let the player see it. Inherently, this means like cards like Ash Blossom that everybody should play, it will get played even more, and so it will just push more and more people to a very generic meta deck, which may then create more pressure for Yu-Gi-Oh! To add more cards, which they're not really doing the most of a good job on that. They've also got some new accessories. We'll check those out in the shop. And then a new selection pack. And then apparently there will be 2 festivals held in June. Like, I assume not overlapping. One through June 12th through the 25th. One through June 18th through the 28th. Ooh, that does feel like that is overlapping. Although maybe not so much, because maybe the 12th one is mostly going to be done by the 18th anyways. And that it just won't disappear until the 25th. Or maybe they're trying something really weird out. And there's a new tryout duel rental competition happening now. So yeah, we are all over the place with new stuff. So login for 1 day gets you this pack. I think it's a pack. No, it's not a pack, it's a protector. Road to World's Proficiency Test. Just logging in gives it to you. I don't know how that proves in any way you're proficient, but I assume we'll get more things that we need to do otherwise. Then probably in the middle of this stream we'll get another Duel live. Then like from bonus packs. We could open these 5 bonus packs, but we probably don't want to. Let's see, what do we got new? We've got this new Cyber Universe deck. Field, not deck. Duel field. We've got a protector, which I guess is connected to the Cyber Universe field. Like, it thematically you would assume these were all connected. And then we've got the Abyss Actor's Curtain Call, which, yeah, I'd have to say none of this really seems like this is connected. And when you purchase these things, you don't really get a prompt to use them, so you'd have to know where to really implement the things we just purchased, which are in different places. And let's see. We're not in the best situation as far as this new deck. If I open 30 packs, I'll only have like maybe 15 more packs I could open as far as secrets. But I think we're actually fairly safe to just assume all secret packs that we unlock are not going to be new, and so we can be more confident around just opening new packs now. Like, clearly, since this is a new expansion pack, you have a good reason to open probably 20 to 30 packs here. We own none of these ultra rares and basically none of these super rares, but there is a decent amount of rares and normals that we already open. So these selection packs aren't even 100% new cards. Thematically, when they put out a selection pack like this, it might mean that there's a slightly better meta deck to play in ranked, and that the ultra rares and super rares are new cards to this game specifically, Duel Masters app. Or it might mean nothing at all. But I guess we're still going from the perspective of trying to own all the cards. So let's at least start with 10 packs and open this. Immediately we didn't get an ultra rare pack, which may very well force us to purchase another 10 packs even if we didn't want to. Several new cards in that, but no keys, even though we got some new super rares. That's a little surprising. Yeah, we're not seeing any keys so far. For the accountability section, I'm still playing Flight of the Amazon Queen. I'll just leave it at that. It's kind of a slow-paced old point and click, so the dialogue gets a little exhausting. Figuring out the puzzles, it's not one I really have memorized the solution to either, although I know I've played it before. Maybe I didn't play it all the way through, but I bet I did and just forgot most of it, which is very believable. It tries to be something that's a little less raunchy than Leisure Suit Larry, but still kind of mature in its content. Here we have an ultra rare. We got lucky. We're getting some foil things. And that gives us 2 keys to probably the same expansion. But yeah. That's pretty much all I've been doing other than watching Ted Lasso. Which... it's fine. It's great. It arguably in season 3 doesn't seem to have as much of a focus as far as just a general idea that there might be a goal there. You don't have the threat of them being re-relegated or de-relegated down to a lower league in the 3rd season. And they introduce potential magic into a soccer sports show, which is a little weird. And maybe they just have too many characters. They're trying to bring back Nate as a character and soften him as a character so he could come back and get a redemption arc. But yeah, it's fine as a show. It's not knocking my socks off with anything amazingly new. If anything, I think they've made Ted Lasso or himself a little bit more of a human with human problems instead of this paragon of just niceness that they started him out as. Maybe that loses some of its charm. There's definitely a lot of room here to open another pack. And as far as this Neo Space comrades, let's see, I bet we have a decent amount of these. Well, actually, there is a decent amount of room to open this also. But first things first, would make more sense to open this. I'm trying something a little bit different today, drinking an energy drink. Again, no ultra rare pack, so we might be forced to buy another 10 pack. I'm trying to establish 8 hours during the daytime of being awake, and instead of what I've been doing lately, which is waking up and then falling asleep and really just insomnia like crazy. Like, I'm not sure I'm getting close to even 11, probably maybe even 10 hours a day being awake. Yeah, which that's ridiculous. There we have another ultra rare. Yet no keys. Wonder if it says something that you're getting ultra rares and super rares, but you're not getting keys to a secret pack, that perhaps there should be a secret pack for newer cards. And see, we really haven't seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Introduce a secret pack in a while. It would make sense for them to introduce a secret pack every time there's a new selection pack. Yeah. The only other thing I did was I watched the... I guess it's not called the Game Awards, Summer Games Fest, maybe that's the name of it. I watched it, then I watched Skill Up's recap, which is funny because Skill Up showed up in the Game Fest Awards and then didn't even mention that he was... footage of him was used during the presentation, even though he was also in the studio, in the audience when it happened, when the footage of him played. And we'll get into that. A lot of announcements, and I will say that generally it does... Why did I get 2 keys for the same super rare? I guess that opens 2 secret packs. They did a little bit of a better job of including Asian games. Mostly, I think that comes down to they got Hoyo Voice from China to promote one game, and then they got Square Enix to promote 2 Final Fantasy games, although one of them is a mobile phone game. They're still not really doing the greatest of jobs as far as including Asian style games in these announcements, and the whole experience still does come off as just a lot of trailers and a lot... Mostly my biggest complaint about the presentation is that it's still very much promoting like celebrities and celebrity game developers, but then otherwise kind of just ignoring game developers in general. I kind of wish there were some nerdier game developers that would come on stage and talk about their games and be hyped up about the games. But if you're not presentable effectively, Jeff Keighley won't let you on stage. At least that's how this presentation went. I feel like they did a better job of having more game developers present their games directly before. But yeah. there's still a lot of cards here. There's still a decent argument to buy another 10-pack. Maybe we'll just do that later. Meanwhile, the other new secret packs. Decent argument to get this, but not really great argument to open this secret pack. Maybe a decent argument to open that one too. I think this might be a new secret pack. You certainly aren't making a big deal. This one would be a no. I see Jaden's on the chat saying hello. Hello, Jaden. Alright, let's go back to this one and reconsider this one. This one would give us the Space Neoverse cards. But I think I'm more interested in getting a little variety and opening this. But no, I don't think that's really the right move either. I think your best bet would be to open this pack one more time. No, I don't even think this is the right move. Alright. Yep. It's getting more and more difficult to make a decision as far as which one of these has the best chances of getting new cards. I think this is your best bet though. Go with this. Buy 10 packs. If that fails miserably and I don't get an ultra rare, then we can open another 10 packs with a guaranteed ultra rare. And anything that this might unlock as far as new cards and secret packs we'll have to ignore. There was definitely a lot of trailers in the game show, since this is effectively just replacing E3. But there is also weirdness in it, in that there's the Summer Games show, or whatever it's called, part for like an hour. And then there's Day of the Devs from Double Fine for like an hour, which is a completely different show that just happens to be on the same stream that I was watching after the game Summer Game Fest, or whatever it's called. I think Steam is called the Summer Game Fest. But maybe that is the overall name. And then after the Day of Devs experience, there was the Devolver Digital presentation, which the Devolver Digital presentation, I am not sure that they were announcing anything other than one game the whole time. So it definitely is still a parody presentation as far as the Devolver Digital presentation, and like maybe there was 2 or 3 games they announced, but it just doesn't really need to exist anymore. If it was a parody of all the awfulness of E3, and E3 now is effectively just dead, this would have been a fine time for them to change things up. On the Devolver Digital presentation in particular, they don't even have the same continuing story that they had for the first 3 of those, and the same presenter lady. So it felt kind of scaled down, and like it was just doing the same general nonsense that they've already done multiple times. As your 10-pack purchase had no ultra rares, your next 10-pack of this pack, Neo Space Comrades, will be guaranteed to have at least 1 ultra rares. And so we've now been screwed, and we have to spend another 1,000 gems, which will leave me short on gems. But yeah, the Day of Devs from Double Fine really should just be merged into the presentation of Microsoft. Otherwise, you have this situation where Microsoft is still presenting itself poorly in that it is too hands-off, even in the announcement and promotion of games for companies that they own, and it's just disconnected on their whole conversation. It would make a lot of sense to start merging these different events into one Xbox Microsoft presentation, particularly if they get that Activision Blizzard merger. They're going to have a much better lineup to show at one presentation or two. I could see them doing, honestly, 4 presentations per year, but right now, if you've got a Microsoft E3 presentation and then Microsoft Directs happening potentially at least once a year, that's 2 presentations. Then you have Day of the Devs from Double Fine. Then you have ZeniMax and like Elder Scrolls, Fallout, things like that. They have their own little presentation, so that's already up to 4. I'm pretty sure there's some other companies they own that either should be involved in presentations or have their own separate presentations. Once you start to get to Blizzard, if you own Blizzard, there would be a giant BlizzCon that gets you up to 5 events, so there's at least room to get rid of at least one of them, when it would make a lot of sense to merge everything together and say, hey, as far as our publishing strategy, we're going to put all of our publishers together, we're going to get them on the same page. We've got to get all of our game publishers on the same page anyways, so that we don't have Double Fine releasing a game on the same week as Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, or a new Fallout comes out, or Starfield comes out. Yeah, so they already have to coordinate, so it would make a lot of sense to coordinate all of that and probably lay off some people who are redundant when it comes to advertising and publishing. Also, yeah. So if all of that got coordinated, it would make a lot of sense for there to be a spring, summer, winter, fall presentation from Microsoft, one for each season, to make all the announcements for all the games coming from that one, from Microsoft alone. Right, well, we got a decent amount of cards there. Where are we? We can't buy any more anyways, but I think that puts us in a pretty good space where I really wouldn't have wanted to buy any more secret packs anyways from this secret pack. Of course, that also opened up a bunch of other secret packs. This one really wouldn't have been a candidate to buy more packs from, and I imagine that's going to be the case for all of these secret packs. You could have, if you had extra gems, bought a 10 or 20 pack from there. None of these secret packs, though, feel like they are giving you the ultimate cards you need for ranked play. This deck, in particular, would be an absolute no. There would be no reason to open that one. Most of these cards do feel like they are from actually a really long time ago, because you're not seeing XYZ or Link summoning cards much in these secret packs. Alright. If I do get more crystals, would I even want to come back and open up another 10 pack here? I could see a reason to do that. But that would have to be later. And this dual pass is 100% done, so I'm not going to benefit from getting crystals from that, and it's not going to reset for 16 days. So how does that really balance out? This is 61 days, so in 17 days potentially I could get the new dual pass, and I will have to save up enough gold to purchase that. Let's see, what would that cost? I think it's 600. Well, it might be 700 gems. So yeah, in 17 days we'll probably have a new dual pass that'll get us down the path to getting more cards. Now we have some new daily quests to do. We have a new login, and we have a new duel live. Let's see, let's go into the deck here. And see how many extra cards we got. Interesting how the audio changed there. Dismantle all extra cards. So in purchasing all those packs we got 590 crafting points worth of normals, 470 of rares, 50 of super rares, and 0 of ultra rares. Which, yeah, doesn't really change anything. What does the symbol mean here? We have 21 of 25 decks, and then we have one event deck, I guess. That's what that means. Let's go back to this deck editor for a second. What it would get really useful is if the statistics that we see popping up now showed up on the cards while building a deck, or if I could sort by how often it is played, because then I could really make a great deck very easily by saying, hey, filter this down to cards that are played a lot or that have a win ratio of more than 50%. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, we can show this off. Let's see, is anything happening here? A dual trial? Yeah, let's obviously get through this. We just need 3 wins here to get this one pack. And we have to choose a deck, so... For the most part, I don't want to read any of these cards or really learn them. Not in a bulk way like this, where I'd have to go through 15, 20 different cards and figure out their strategy. It looks to me like this is a ritual spell deck, which means ritual summoning, I would suspect. And it does seem to be storyline wise thematically connected. At least somewhat. Okay. So we'll select this. What does it actually say there? A deck based on Dogmatica ritual monsters with Dogmatica Macabre, you can special summon Dogmatica ritual monsters using fusion and synchro monsters in the graveyard. Send cards from your extra deck to the graveyard using cards such as Nadar Servant to prepare for the ritual summons. In addition, Dogmatica ritual monsters such as Dogmatica Albazoa have the effects that send cards in you or your opponent's extra deck to the graveyard. Understanding your opponent's tactics and accurately exploit their weakness. Okay. Yeah, that's about as much help as I think I can take. There. Twitter at the moment is not working for me, so I had a heck of a time trying to look at a lot of the news. Most of it is from the most of it is just announcements of trailers and things. There were release dates that were announced, and there was at least one game that they were pretending like that no news had come out around that before, when really they had. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose levels are exactly the same. So you summon this. Play this. Let's add this. So you've got this usage rate popping up here whenever you play a card. Is the Macabre. You can see this deck is incredibly low for this deck, which I think that highlights the emphasis here as far as Master Duels, that they've done these tryout decks specifically to try to encourage more variety in cards being played. Kiro is on the chat saying hi. Hi. Well, that didn't lead to a great card. Guess I should have paid attention to what the attack was of that card. Let's see. Maybe this will do something. So we can activate this and destroy the card. I don't know if that's really going to convince people, though, seeing that a card is used infrequently. And you're not even seeing a win ratio pop up on these infrequent cards, whereas when you do watch the Duel Lives, it says a win ratio. If anything, we're getting this weird lightning effect for very rare cards that are barely used, when you probably should be encouraged to play very common cards. Like, expert ranked players can play very rare cards to their fullest potential, but your average player should really stick to the generic cards everybody else is playing until they've figured out their own strategy. That was one of the things I was complaining about, I think, in the last stream too, is that there is this disconnect between the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, the first series in particular, and every couple episodes you're fighting somebody different with a completely different deck. And then the actual trading card game, where most people are just playing the same decks against each other. whether it's tier limits at the moment or Zodiac Tri Brigade in several months ago was one of the big ones. I'm still playing that myself. Okay. Let's see if this will work for something. This time let's make sure we throw something in the graveyard that I want to throw. We'll send this guy in the graveyard. And we'll add this to the hand. And then see here. Kiro is asking what rank am I in, saying she is or he is in Platinum 5. You're doing better than I am at the moment. I'm at, I think, Gold 4. So, yeah. It is kind of early in the month, but I have definitely not done the best job of getting up the ranks. I was trying to play this new tier limits deck, and I'm not succeeding greatly on that, and not really learning how to play it. So we have a Video Games Chronicle article here saying that PlayStation won't be attending Gamescom 2023. Sony reportedly has no plans to exhibit in the business or public areas of the show. Which I don't know if that actually means too much of anything, but destroy your opponent's monster, sure. Is there any extra reason why you would destroy it instead of just letting it send it to the graveyard? I don't know. Apparently, Nintendo is reportedly close to striking a deal with Universal. I assume that's Universal Pictures, for a Zelda movie. It's an interesting thought, but it does have some speed bumps in the idea. That we'd already been told that all of the Nintendo movies going forward, which they are planning on making more, they've said, were going to go through Nintendo's own publishing production company. So this would be going back on that news and saying that they're actually making a deal with Universal. Then you get into the more artistic, practical problems around the Zelda movie, in that you have Link as the main character in Zelda, as a character that talks even less than Mario does in Mario games. So you're going to be creating a whole new character called Link, which you already do in half of the Zelda games anyways, because there's like 4, 5, maybe even more different Links from different worlds, different timelines. So yeah, you're just going to be creating this character named Link. You're going to have to give him more personality, more of a story, and then you're going to go on an adventure game that's not interactive, thus not as interesting as actually playing a Zelda game. And you could certainly maybe animate some cool action and fighting in a Zelda movie, but I think that's kind of all you can do. It's going to feel more like a boss rush or a collection of cutscenes of fighting bosses, I would imagine, than anything else. And I just don't know if a action adventure movie is going to make sense animated as much as it might be more interesting if it was live action, and I assume it's animated. If it was live action, then maybe the action sequences would make more sense. Now the deal with these tryout decks in particular is that you know you're only going to be playing these tryout decks against one of the other tryout decks. So if I was just playing a Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck against the three tryout decks, I'd almost certainly win. Okay. Why can I not summon that? I don't know. This other deck, as far as these Abyss actors, seems to kind of heavily rely on pendulum summoning. Wonder if I'm hurting his strategy any by not putting them in the graveyard, or if I'm hurting my strategy by not putting them in the graveyard. Outside of Link as the main character, you have less secondary characters in Zelda movies compared to the Mario movie also, so that becomes more of an issue in that you only can really have Zelda and Ganondorf. You could have secondary characters certainly, but I just don't think it's going to get very big as a idea. The adventure aspect of Zelda could be very interesting as a live action, because then you could have a whole horse riding sequence where you see someone doing some amazing tricks while riding horseback, and you could see some amazing archery and sword swinging and back flipping and jumping. But if you did make a live action type show like that, it definitely feels like it would be very similar to the Tomb Raider live action movies. Which, yeah. I definitely think if they are going to make a Zelda movie, animated or not, it's going to heavily try to stunt cast, just like the Mario movie did. And so, it's worth giving a thought, certainly, as to who would play Zelda, who would play Link, who would play Ganondorf. Would you bring in somebody like The Rock or another wrestler to be Ganondorf? That would make a lot of sense. You're looking for a Zelda character who would be princess-like and beautiful, but would they potentially stunt cast and get someone who is a person of color instead of the pale white skin that she's always been depicted as? Or you could bring in an Asian, and that would probably work well for Nintendo too, but I don't know how many Asian actresses would really be well suited to play Zelda. Although Zelda could really just be, you put any actress in a Zelda dress and they'll look close enough to Zelda. In the same way, if you put any male actor in a Link outfit, he'll look like Link. Best case scenario, they make a movie that is just an abridged version of Ocarina of Time, and then you can, in particular, work on that nostalgia and have a long enough narrative with a lot of side characters. Let's see. So that should have destroyed this, but it didn't. Interesting. Can that be destroyed by a battle with a monster special summon from the extras deck? Interesting. So this is just like immune to being destroyed. Special summon this. Okay. Target 4 fusion cards in his graveyard. Banish all of those. See what this does. See what this does. I guess banish this. Send 2 monsters with different names from your extras to the graveyard. Apparently that was enough to convince them to surrender. Well, I don't think I had a fully satisfactory experience there with that deck, but we got the victory, so what do I care? Like, these tryout decks definitely don't feel like it. I am a little concerned here that you have this Legend Anthology deck, which is going to want us to play quite a bit, at least to this point, where we have 5,500 tokens. Yeah, let's not read that. And then we also have this Synchro deck, which is also going to want us to play quite a bit, to the same 5,500 tokens at least. It seems like both of those are going to somewhat overlap. And then the currently open thing is here, and then we've kind of forgotten about the World Championship qualifiers. So I don't know when that's going to get removed. Yep. Here we can show in ranked play when I get back to it. I am at gold tier 4. 3 more victories to get to gold tier 3. Hopefully we could get to platinum 5 before the end of the month, but honestly I don't have a lot of faith in that with all this secondary stuff to do. Alright, well, let's just try this next deck. Machine type deck based around Spriggan's monsters that have been strengthened with the addition of new cards. You can use the effect Great Sand of Sea, Gold Gondola to special summon a Spriggan's XYZ monster from your extras deck. The goal is to call forth Gigantic Champion Sargass, a powerful monster that can also be XYZ summoned by stacking it on top of a Spriggan's XYZ monster. Okay. So I'm not sure I've seen any of these cards before. I do like the idea that this might be a deck that has been reinforced and might actually be better playable now because of new cards. But there's so many different theme decks and types of decks that exist. I just don't think Yu-Gi-Oh! Could or even really cares to try to keep them all playable. Even when you look at like Magic the Gathering, the like blue decks versus the black decks versus the red decks, it seems like it's very widely inconsistent as far as which of those types of decks you can play, and single color decks in particular are not really that playable in Magic the Gathering anyways. It's usually a blue-black deck or something like that, where there's 2 colors you're playing, if not 3. I would also question, I suppose, apart the as far as a Zelda movie, if there are just that many references or jokes you can have compared to the Mario movie. Because while kids particularly today, love Breath of the Wild, that's about the only Zelda game I think kids today really care about or love is Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think they have really any knowledge or care for any of the previous Zelda games. Whereas Odyssey was also Mario in general. It has RDSC and Mario Kart, and I think there's just more of a desire to play some of the older Mario games, and it's easier to play some of the older games. There was a Link's Awakening remake on the Switch, but then there was that 3-pack bundle of Sunshine, Galaxy 1, and I think Galaxy 2 on the Switch. Plus, the eShop has the Mario games. It probably has the original Zelda and Zelda 2 also. But I would almost certainly bet that there are more Zelda games that are not playable on the Switch than there are Mario games that are not playable on the Switch. Moving on, the Detroit Become Human developer Quantic Dream has formed an indie publishing label. They were acquired at some point, and so now they were advertising this game, which is more of a survival game underwater. Let's see. Yeah, it was acquired by the Chinese company NetEase in August of last year, and so this is probably the first big change we're seeing in that David Cage is not just making another highly cinematic style video game that barely has any gameplay in it. Now they're publishing something that is more of a somewhat cinematic, I would describe it, survival game. It's not trying for the biggest amount of graphics that it could possibly go for, which at a certain level, had Quantic Dream just constantly gone down the path of trying to have the most hyper-realistic graphics and the most movie-like games you can make, their efforts would just look worse and worse in comparison, because it's too expensive to make games look like movies. And there's long been suspicion and speculation, and it does seem like a pretty valid claim to accuse David Cage of really wanting to make movies instead of making video games. And it seems like that idea has been held back in favor of this new game. One face-up card to the graveyard, activate the Great Sea Gold Golga directly from your deck or graveyard. Alright. Let's see how this works. He's got something he can activate. If you control no Spriggans XYZ, you can discard one Spriggan card, special summon a Spriggan XYZ from your deck. Okay. 16, 1100. Let's go with the 8-star. Now it's activating their ability. Platinum Games wanted to reiterate that they have their developer diaries episode 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, as far as them talking about the development of Bayonetta 3. I think they're doing a decent minimal post-launch effort to try and remind people Bayonetta 3 still exists. I would not be surprised if its limited reach has limited its sales, since I think it is only on the Switch. If it is on PC, I mean, I guess I could check to see if it was on PC. Let's see, what's the best way to go about doing this? I reached for my phone, but that's really not the way to do it, is it? I should search on my computer so I can show the results on the stream. Let's see. Bayonetta 3. Yeah, it was released on October 28th, 2022 for the Switch, and nowhere else, according to Wikipedia. Let's see. Add one sprig in it from your deck or hand. Okay. Let's do this. Now let's do this. Oh, this is Gold Gogus. So that card was pointless. Alright. That. Moving kind of slow here. Send this to the grave. Counter that effect. And that looks like that's probably all I can do. Yep. It's kind of sad on Bayonetta 3 here that you have this whole voice acting controversy, which I guess is news. But this is just always going to be part of it, even though this Helena Taylor original claims proved to be completely exaggerated, to say it nicely, as far as why she wasn't asked back to be the voice actress for Bayonetta, the English voice actress. You do have like updates on this controversy, but that controversy basically disappeared too, because it wasn't a juicy story of them actively screwing over the English voice actress. It was more of a story of the English voice actress from Bayonetta 1 and 2 either asking for too much money or being confused about what she was being offered for voice acting, and just really taking what should have been more of a private thing public, and calling for a full boycott of the game just because she didn't get her way. Sounds like she was just entitled and difficult to work with. We also managed to run into some controversy outside of all of the announcements. Activision has removed Nick Merck, apparently a famous YouTuber and FaZe Clan co-owner. I guess he's just FaZe Clan co-owner's skin. They removed it seemingly very quickly following anti-LGBTQIA plus comments. Although I definitely have heard from people on the other side saying that his comments maybe weren't as atrocious as they really should be. Like, it definitely seems like this is a controversy to probably not comment on until all the facts are in. But yeah, you have somebody saying this is what's happening 4 blocks from my Overwatch League apartment. Americans are a real sad place now. Now that's not the FaZe Clan guy. This is the FaZe Clan guy, and his comment is they should leave little children alone. That's the real issue. Apparently anti-LGBT protesters attacked pro-LGBT demonstrators outside of a Glendale, California school board meeting, according to Brendan Murphy. So, yeah. It definitely is, I think, accurate to say he is not siding with the pro-LGBT demonstrators, whereas Activision definitely is. Of course, Activision Blizzard does not really have clean hands to take any moral stands at all. But clearly every video game company is deep in Pride Month, and they are going to be pro-Pride and pro-LGBTQIA+. He did, after this single sentence, then go on a stream and try to, I guess, further explain himself other than just one sentence. And he has said that he won't apologize for the comment or take it down. Part of what is assumed of this controversy is that the school in question, as far as I heard it, and I just really heard the story, and I'm mostly trying to avoid these kinds of stories and these kinds of controversies anyways. I'm not doing a good job at it, but I'm mostly trying to avoid them. Was that the school board officially recognized Pride Month, which probably started a lot of this controversy in the first place, or the people fighting. If you flip the scenario in a different direction. Let's not make that analogy, actually. Let me give my own 2 cents here. Parents are stupid. Let's start with the controversial statement here. The average parent, set of parents, or single parents, whatever, whoever's parents or legal guardians, whoever's in charge of raising kids, the average one in the United States or even around the world is going to be below average, and at least half of them are going to be below average, and at least half of them are going to be above average. We want, ideally, to have a society in which everybody knows just about the same thing and speaks the same language and uses the same words as such. And so, if you left education to parents, they definitely would not give a standardized education to their kids. There's just no way they could. That's why we have public schools in the first place. When you get into the mess that is the public school system in the United States, in that you can also take your kids out of a public school and put them in a private school, then you inherently, by putting a kid in a private school, give them a different, again, non-standardized education. And almost 100% without exception, the only reason any parent ever takes their kids out of public school system and puts them in the private school system is because they want them to be taught something different that's not that standardized public education. There are, sure, some private schools for very rich kids that they think are geniuses. But even that, even if it was like a genius school, that's still not the standard experience. And yeah, it's better for geniuses to be in a standard public school system, in my opinion, than for them to be in their own segregated schools. Even advanced classes, I think, are a mistake. So, regardless of the subject, regardless of what's being taught, here I'll get into some controversy by saying this, I'm sure, but regardless of even if it's correct, or scientifically accurate or anything, I think kids should all be in public school and should be all taught the same thing. Now, ideally, they'd all be taught the same thing by a panel of scientists who have peer-reviewed every single thing written in every single textbook. Inherently, it is also worth pointing out that the state of Texas basically has a stranglehold on what is put in textbooks. So there is already a severe conservative bias, a lot of what's being taught in schools from the textbooks. So yeah, I think kids should have a standard experience. How does that relate to one school board deciding to acknowledge Pride Month? Well, Pride Month's a thing, it's happening, you should probably acknowledge it and say it's there. You shouldn't attempt to create a censorship scenario where it's not talked about or not allowed to be talked about. If you want to make the argument to teach both sides of the argument, okay. I think most people would say at least one of those sides of the argument falls apart, regardless of which way you lean. But yeah, in general, I think the schools should just, whatever the school board decides, should be applied equally to all the students, so all the students get a standardized experience. Does that really have anything to do with what this controversy is? is no, not really. I went on a rant there to basically say nothing and probably get myself in trouble by even saying nothing. Yeah. There is definitely a better argument to say, hey, these adults outside the school board should not be fighting and should not be setting such a terrible example. You're teaching kids that violence is a valid option around a minimal argument of ideology. At a certain point, it is almost an argument that parents are trying to make, that they have the right to self-rule and not be under any authority at all, which is very much that. I'm gonna run out of time here. I don't think there's anything I can do. I think I've got to just try and attack quickly. And I guess in a general sense, I just don't think parents should be in charge of kids at all. I think it should all be handed over to a set of professional nannies. Just boarding schools for all the kids. Give them a very general thing of an experience. Very standardized education. They've changed the audio there. Let's take it back, and in case I actually did make any sense of what I just said there. So how does that relate to FaZe Clan's statement? I guess I just am saying I don't agree with his philosophy that parents really should be in charge of raising and educating kids as much as he thinks he is. He is a new father, which new fathers and new parents in general are insane. They literally have been driven crazy by babies crying and such. And people say, well, once they're a new father, you get this different way of thinking. And yeah, that's what I call the insanity of being a new parent, is that your brain chemistry and the way your ability to logically think things out or objectively think things out goes out the window. It's all very emotional based, and parents inherently develop this idea that they're genius parents and they know how to raise their kids better than anybody else, even other people who have raised kids themselves. I mean, just look at the numbers there. A teacher is effectively raising 30 students for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Even if you had a massively large amount of family and you were homeschooling people, if you were like the Duffers, just to pick a random group of people who have a lot of kids, they had like 15 kids and counting or something. Like, even if you were homeschooling all 15 of those kids Monday through Friday, you're still only doing half the work of what one teacher is doing, and you don't have any of the support as far as other teachers helping you learn to be a better teacher. So parents are just not really qualified to raise their own kids. Let's try this deck. I'm not even going to read what the description is or look at the cards. Just going to jump in here with it. So yeah, I don't think parents are good at raising kids. I think at best they're average. Like there are definitely some great parents out there, but I just don't think you get an education certificate, at least, if not a degree, without learning more tricks. Some of that really comes from just a horrible history of education in general, that educators in general, even now, kind of suck, but they have been awful in the past, really, really bad, really, really abusive. Um, and I've very well made the same mistake that FaZe Clan's co-owner has in speaking an opinion at all. Does this really have anything to do with video games? No, not really. Like, if you were not going to play, if you were going to call for a boycott or something of Call of Duty because of Activision Blizzard's obvious support of LGBT stuff, then you should have probably called for that boycott years ago. So I doubt any real boycott around that. I don't know if there is really even a rabid fan base of FaZe Clan people that are going to inherently support him. There probably will be some, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a big number. Maybe a couple thousand people. He should have known his statement was going to backfire on him from several people. Arguably, maybe Activision Blizzard shouldn't have skins in their game in the first place. That's the bigger statement, certainly from gamers, and should make, is that they should boycott Call of Duty because they have skins and microtransactions in the first place. They should be boycotting Diablo 4 right now because it has skins and microtransactions. Yeah, that is more of a gamer statement, or a gamer-centric thing. Moving on. Should have moved on a long time ago. Video Games Chronicle has a summary here of the Summer Game Fest show. Each linking to one of their articles if you wanted to go through all of that, but we're going to go through each article individually, so there's not really too much to say there. Apparently Atlas accidentally revealed a Persona 3 Reload and Persona 5 Tacticia early on Instagram. Both games will seemingly be available on Xbox Game Pass on day one. Persona 3 Reload, I assume, is a remaster of Persona 3, hopefully with some optimizations to make Persona 3 less grindy. As far as Persona 5 Tacticia, I assume that is a spin-off game. You still have this weird situation, though, where they aren't really trying to do anything with Persona 1 or 2. So it definitely feels like it's really their statement that you should just play their most recent version of Persona 3 to get into the Persona series. But every time I look at Persona 3, there's just too much grind in those games for it to make sense. Grasshopper Manufacturer is going to hold its first ever Direct next week. Studios revealed what it's been counting down to. So that's an announcement for an announcement, basically. And if they're holding a Direct, then that does imply to me that they've got at least 2 things to announce. It'd be weird for them to have an announcement for only one thing. Although, in all fairness, I do imagine what they're going to announce is that they've got a new port of some of their older games and then one new game to announce. I wouldn't expect too much more than that. Them potentially remastering multiple No More Heroes games at the same time, or announcing 2 or 3 games in development would be a little too ambitious for Grasshopper Manufacturing. A story-driven puzzle adventure game called Summerhill has been announced for PC. It's a folklore based about loss and livestock, apparently. I don't know why I opened this link. This really isn't big news. Let's see. The Great Lord 123 says, "It is I saw this actor in a video today, lol." I guess that's what I'm playing right now. Is Abyss actor. I guess I'm willing to take some feedback as far as seeing statistics while playing, but I think I would heavily lean towards the idea of keeping it up. It's going to be very informative, although it's more informative when I see the opponent playing something. Special summon something. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to special summon something. Let's go ahead and just battle. The Great Lord goes, "Do you not know what you are playing?" How exactly? Oh, very easily, because I'm doing the tryout event and I just picked the 3rd loner deck, which I think was called Abyss Actor, but that is exactly as much as I looked into it. So yeah, I don't think that's even that weird, frankly. I think a lot of people are going to try and get the free pack from the tryout decks as quickly as possible, and they don't want to read extra, and they don't want to look at cards extra, and you are just going to have that constant pressure from those lazier players, or busy players if you want to be generous, in which they aren't going to engage with the tryout event anywhere as much as I'm sure they want them to. So we have this story from GameDeveloper.com saying Cyan Worlds credits AI in development but not actors. And knowing GameDeveloper.com, let's just read that headline and subheadline, and then look at Cyan Worlds' response to it. The update here saying Cyan Worlds published a statement clarifying to the extent the usage of AI technology was used in Firmament. Of course, I have to point out my own bias. I love Myst, so I want to lean towards supporting Cyan as much as possible. Now, I do have a concern, I will say, as far as just not crediting actors in the game. I think that's definitely going to be in the inexcusable category. If that's really what's going on. The Grey Lord says, "How do you make a deck and then not know what you're playing?" I didn't make the deck. I selected a loner deck. And then he says, "Reading is great. It increases your imagination." I'd argue not always. I think there's plenty of boring, dry books you can read that will not increase your imagination at all. And frankly, even if you read an incredibly imaginative book, say the Lord of the Rings series of books, or Harry Potter or anything like that, I don't know if that inherently increases the imagination of the reader. I've found that even people who are deep into fantasy often, I've found in some people, I won't say often, that they still have no imagination after that, and that they get locked into loving something like Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Star Wars. But if you were to ask them to even write a fan fiction of their favorite Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever their favorite of, they really couldn't do anything imaginative with it, or even write a fan fiction. I think imagination is just one of those natural talents that some people have and some people have less of. I'd say everybody has some of it. I don't know if you can really increase it from reading other people's creations and imaginations. But anyways, regarding the AI-assisted content in Firmament, as many users of you have seen and noticed, our credits in Firmament mention AI-assisted content. This has been presented in the credits for Firmament since release day, and we've never hidden this information. It says AI-assisted content was journals, logs, checklists, newspapers, stories, songs, poems, letters, loosely scattered papers, all backer portraits, all founder portraits, the sunset paintings in the Art Nouveau wallpaper, in the Swan Dormancy hallway, propaganda banners, coastal spill decal kits, all voiced mentor, announcer, founder, and other speeches, backer exclusive content. So this was a Kickstarter backed game. So that maybe also will change your opinion, certainly, as to just how heavily AI was involved. I doubt Cyan is the first company to use AI to create a bunch of content. They may just be the first honest company to put it in the credits. So the statement continues, AI assisted does not mean wholly AI generated, which at a certain point, depending on what you mean by AI, almost everything would be AI assisted if you're using a computer. Unfortunately, there have been articles published recently which implied, especially in their headlines, that Cyan generated much of Firmament using AI tools. This is category false and misleading, and we are disappointed and frustrated to see this happening. At a certain point, I just don't think you should probably credit AI at all. You can't get a copyright for AI, so the second you admit that there are portions of your content that is made by an artificial intelligence and not a human, you lose the possibility of copyrighting this. In fact, they've opened themselves up to the door to say that Firmament as a whole game may not be copyrightable. A judge would have to admit that, would have to declare that. And that would certainly be a nightmare if all of a sudden your brand new game is not copyrightable. Thus, anybody can make a copy of it and sell it or just download it online. Which, this has been the argument in the past as to why big companies at least will not potentially in the future use AI. Is because it would open up them to losing the copyright on their products. Usage rate 0.001% or 0.001%. Alright. Well, I will admit to the Great Lord 123 on the chat, which I kind of hate your name. By not reading what this deck does, I am very much lost as to what the strategy here is. Seems like a lot of pendulum summons towards some larger goal I'm missing. Alright, let's just lose there, I think. The statement continues. Some folks, that's probably the wrong word to use, may be concerned about our usage of AI, so in the interest of clarification, the voice performances in Firmament were voiced 100% of the time by talented members of our development team who elected to not be credited by name. I don't think, in this point, I can cut Cyan any slack there. I don't think you get to elect to not be credited. I think just because of the way this all goes, you pretty much should have to credit it. It's like if you were to say some of the work was done by talented people on our team who were interns and elected not to be paid. Yeah, there's a reason why unpaid labor is illegal, even if you wanted to elect to it. And interns legally are not supposed to work on anything that in any way could profit the company. It's supposed to be 100% beneficial to an intern. The kind of made up projects you would give them for that exact same reason. So yeah, on that, it is definitely a case where the voice actors need to be credited. That needs to be corrected, in my opinion, immediately. Everybody should be credited, even if they don't want to, even if they hate the place, even if they just flipped the bird and quit one day and tried to set their desk on fire, even if they literally came in shooting up the place. Like, there's no reason to not be credited, and it's on the morals of the company and the credibility of a company to make sure that happens. You don't want any possibility of impropriety there, so just credit people. This is not like it's a SAG-AFTRA job. Getting in the credits doesn't mean you get residuals later or anything like that. Credits are effectively very, very close to the legal requirement that companies have to accurately report whether somebody worked at a job and how the start date and the end time of that job. You can literally sue a company if they lied and said you didn't work at a job you did work at. This should be about the same thing. Alright. Well, that definitely didn't work. So, yeah, just to explain the Great Lord, here's how I got Fantastic Theater. I did that. That's how I don't know the name of it. That's how I don't know how to play it. I didn't read any of this. I didn't look at any of the cards. Now I am going to go back to this deck and select this because I did read this one and I did kind of learn how to play that one. Ideally, I just want 2 quick disconnects on these dual trials. I don't want to learn these decks. I don't want to learn anything new because I don't really, having now played each of these loner decks, I don't really believe any of these decks are viable as a main meta deck. Like, I just don't see, from the percentages that are popping up of how much these cards are being played, that they are viable. Let's see. So they were saying the development team voiced the lines. Their voice was simply modulated for the final product of with one of the tools, and with their full permission and control, this same member of the development team, it's a single member, has elected not to be credited in prior games of ours as well for privacy concerns, and not anything to do with tools usage in their games. Again, like, being credited for work you do is not private information. Like, even if you had a stalker or something. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the owner, one of the owners of Cyan, that did the voice acting. Although it sounded more like a female voice, but yeah, you could definitely pull that off with a modulation. I don't know if that really in any way even is a AI thing, though. Like, where's the intelligence in running a voice filter? Anyways. I am going to toss one of these in the graveyard. Then I'm going to take a 4. I guess we can special summon this. Then we can summon this. And we'll end the turn. Additionally, our narrative team elected to use AI writing tools to ideate, that's a big word, an experiment with how information they wrote themselves is presented in the game. The artist who used the AI tools to assist in the creation of assets, iterized above, as well as in the credits, used them solely to ideate on texture assets for very specific scenarios. Other than the small handful of textural assets described, no AI tools were used in any aspect of Sirius's Cyan's world building or art creation efforts. Now, notably, I have to assume that no AI stuff was used at all when Abduction was made, which would have been their last real game. So there is an interesting question there as to whether Firmament has much more content than Abduction does. So far, there's nothing in this statement that is really making me want to nail Cyan to the wall. Though it sounds stupid. I will give them that. It sounds like they have opened themselves up to claims now that any part of Firmament may not be copyrightable, if not the entirety of the game may not be copyrightable. Also, they've opened themselves up to claims that they have infringed on other people's copyright by using AI tools to make textures. See, this continues. Cyan has a talented team of individuals, all human beings, with a breadth of skills and experience, who have been working on the game for over 4 years from scratch. We are disappointed to see their contributions minimized or overshadowed by egregious speculation about the US usage of AI tools, although individuals on the team did leverage AI tools to help with the development of the contents listed above. Absolutely nothing in the small fraction of content of the game for the game was generated and used outright from. Says absolutely nothing in the small fraction of content for the game was generated and used outright from these services without extensive human oversight and revision. which I think they definitely are trying to imply here that the first pass ideas were made with AI, and then they improved on the first pass to change it slightly, which arguably, why even go that far? Why not, if you're just ideating, if you're just trying to get an idea of what it should look like, why not make it in AI and then say, all right, now make something from scratch that looks something like that. Don't trace, don't start with the AI thing at all, just human eye looking at what the AI generated, and then human hand creating something different or better, or even just visually copying it instead of copying the file. Or I guess that wouldn't be really copying it, other than aping it or cloning it. For those who are disappointed in our use of the tools, we hope that you have a better picture now of how we use them to assist with Firmament's development. To our disappointing Kickstarter backers, we hope you understand that none of these tools even existed when we kickstarted the development of the project, but understand why you may be disappointed that we did not disclose our usage of them in the last year. So they've only been using it in the last year, which that also makes a lot of sense. How could they possibly have been using the AI stuff when the AI stuff was not publicly available until about a year ago? But the fact that they were even using it in that late point of the development is a little weird. Like, you should be past the idea of making any new content in your 4th year of development. Let's see. But understand why you may be disappointed that they did not disclose the usage of the last year. These tools land in the gray area for many, but we hope that some accurate context instead of spicy headlines helps clarify this for you. Now, one thing I will say here, the response to this is long and quick to the complaints by, seems like game developers, definitely one of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other people. Kotaku, I guess, maybe is the originator of this story, and game developers just repeating Kotaku. Kotaku themselves being highly likely to be involved in a spicy headline. Man, we're going slow today, aren't we? So again, in the 4th year, they used AI to give them the original ideas, and then, or at least the original first passes in some cases. For journals, logs, checklists, newspapers, stories, songs, poems, letters. Checklists in particular don't stand out as not really needing AI, or logs, really. Let's see. Loosely scattered papers, backer portraits. I think the backer portraits in particular kind of suck, but this also kind of shows where if you're going to have a game kickstarted and then give a bunch of backer rewards that you probably shouldn't bother to give, then hey there, you just surrendered. Good. Well, we need one more victory and then we're done with the tryout duels, the duel trials, whatever they're called. Yeah. it is worth pointing out, I just don't really believe in the idea of Kickstarter, and particularly if you're having to promise rewards like backer portraits and then you're using AI to fulfill on those promises. You're just pushing your creative people into wasting their time making content that just really shouldn't be in the game in the first place. Founder portraits, founders I assume are people who kickstarted it early, the first few hundred or first few. The sunset paintings, the Art Nouveau wallpaper, like all of this really does just come off as stuff that artists should have made from scratch and would have made from scratch if AI hadn't existed. It definitely creates an easy to answer question in saying, if AI didn't exist, would Firmament have been impossible to make as a video game? And the answer to that is obviously no. And they've really done something stupid here. But what do I want as a gamer? Do I want another game from the makers of Myst to come out at a reasonable time? Or do I want the makers of Myst to not make a game or take 10 years to make a new game? Or for them to be acquired by EA or Ubisoft or some other company that would do even less with their style of games or not make games like Myst? I guess that's probably a poor excuse. They should have probably just taken a little bit longer. Like 1 more year to not use AI and not potentially run into a controversy around their game. Which inherently, it's not like people are super hyped around Firmament in the first place. So this is not the kind of press that they would want. They've shot themselves in the foot by making that controversial decision. And I would say this is probably a good lesson for anybody. Don't use AI in your creative endeavors at all. Because there's just too much controversy around it. And it's going to be a long, long time before all of a sudden it becomes just the standard thing. Using AI is the equivalent of torrenting music at this point. If you do it, don't admit to it. And don't be the first person to do it, or the person who is torrenting so much music that they're getting sued from it. I'm talking about like the scene of torrenting music on Napster back in the day. If Napster had stayed more quiet about its own existence, it might have lasted a little bit longer. Although probably not much longer. Okay. Go and activate this. Banish that. The real problem with that controversial article, and this is where I think Kotaku probably realized that they couldn't get a more interesting story, is that if Kotaku had done journalism, which I am not 100% sure, I believe they would have, ever. If they had tried to find the voice actor, the person within the company that had their voice changed by the AI, because that is the one person who is uncredited, And that's the most inflammatory claim you can make there, is that there was an employee who was uncredited. If you had done your research there and found that person and gotten that person to go either on record or off record to say, actually, I am upset that I wasn't credited, that's where you would really get a story. Otherwise, what you have as a situation is you have basically Cyan claiming that there is no victim here and using the AI, when arguably AI people would probably, anti-AI people would probably say the victims are all the peoples whose arts and ideas were stolen to train the AI models. But you can't easily, or if you can at all, you can't find a single artist who says, this is my style, the AI used my art without my permission and infringed on my copyright to make an AI new thing, new texture, new lines of dialogue, new things like that. But when you have the AI models trained on hundreds of thousands of different pieces of literature or images, you really can't find a victim. And if that employee really didn't want to be credited, you don't have a very good story then. Or if you can't find that employee, you don't have as good of a story. Whereas, compare that to the controversy around the English voice actor of Bayonetta 1 and 2 not being called back for Bayonetta 3. If you had that voice actor from Firmament calling for a boycott and saying they were uncredited and saying they were upset about it, then you have a controversy in the story that's much more relatable. Moving on, this was a surprising announcement. Shadows of the Dam is getting a remaster. Grasshopper's 2011 game is making a comeback. This game did not sell well, and I don't think it particularly was well made as a game. It was a cool looking game, certainly, but maybe only really in trailers. I'm gonna throw this in the graveyard here and see what that does. What does this do? This feels like I might be able to win this turn. If I could really pull that off, that'd be great. Well, there we go. And that is it for the Duel tryout deck. And when you win a pack in these events, you just have to open them now. So, is it worth spending 2 hours playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And neglecting ranked play to open a pack that literally gives me no new cards? I don't really think it was, but whatever. We are done with it now. So then that just leaves us until the 12th to do this, unless they decide to throw another rental competition at us. Meanwhile, how many daily quests did we accomplish? Well, everything except for dueling in solo mode. So we are done with the news. I mean, done with the daily quest, not done with the news. We're nowhere close to being done with the news. If anything, I've rambled too much about the news already today, and that's why this is going so long. So yeah, we have to leave it at that. Still working towards getting more resources. Okay, let's see what else. Big news. This was kind of big news, but it's also kind of a little bit of a disappointment in that they announced this Prince of Persia The Lost Crown game, which is not the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. Instead, you have a very different looking guy that I feel like the trailer in particular was playing something akin to like rap music. So I'm not sure if the target here isn't more African people of African descent other than Persian people. The most disappointing part about this, though, is that this looks very much like a 2.5D hack and slash game, much more than a frustration platforming game, which, if anything, I don't like frustration platforming games, but the Persia games in particular were the first frustration platforming games ever to be made. There's a lot of colorful magic attacks happening here, and a lot of hack and slash fighting. You know, it just occurred to me, as it looks like they are going with what I thought was rap music, I could be wrong about this, playing. It does kind of make me wonder just now if they are going with that Netflix controversy, some supporting that, what was it? What is that? Egyptian movie Nefertiti, was it? There was definitely a controversy relatively recently in which they had the Egyptian queen who historically was not dark-skinned, even though the people of the land would have been dark-skinned. And then they were depicting her, so they effectively race swapped her from being, I think, Persian, maybe again, or being more Asian or Middle Eastern, into being more African. I wonder if that's maybe what they're doing here. Or maybe it's just a thing where they're trying to introduce a different character. I feel like this haircut, though, is probably not accurate for the time, and you have a French company in Ubisoft really going for a different type of feel compared to the other Prince of Persia games. Yeah, this just does not strike me as a Persian guy. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Let's see. What would happen if I just search Persia? Persia. Picture of Persia's maps of Persia. Yeah. Okay. If we look at DuckDuckGo image search, yeah, we can say, just as a general search, biblical times, kings of Persia, Persian Empire, going from to the east of Egypt here to a Neo-Babylonian Empire here, and then I guess this is probably contested areas, or this is Babylon alone, and then you have the Persian Empire, very much just landing directly to the sides of India. So yeah, Persia here would be, I think, somewhere close to either in Pakistan or to the left of Pakistan. And then here you have a general picture of what I guess a Persian would look like here. And yeah, here you have what the Prince of Persia looked like otherwise too. So yeah, big hats seem to be a big thing. Long hair, not dreadlocks, long beards. Yeah. Most of the search of just the word Persia is bringing up maps of Persia. Obviously. Yeah. I guess Persia would be Iran now. Maybe. Persian kings. Okay, yeah. That's enough history for today. Suffice it to say, does not look like a Persian character. Now, in fairness, I will say, I don't believe the Prince of Persia character in Sands of Time was Persian either. I believe he is actually also a foreigner who came to Persia and saved the day. So we have to potentially take any changes with that grain of salt. Also, it is totally worthwhile to say that the original Prince of Persia game was rotoscoped images of a United States white guy, and the original Prince of Persia game was programmed by a white guy. So, yeah. There's never been a lot of historical accuracy in the Prince of Persia series. Perhaps I should be more upset in general when looking at this trailer as far as just the massive amount of streaks of light and magic that looks like it's going to be available. It definitely feels more like they're making a Castlevania game than a Prince of Persia game. Although I don't know if there really is that big of a difference. Anyways, moving on. This is, I guess, financially big news. The GameStop has ousted the CEO after recording a $50.5 million quarterly net loss. They have ousted him, terminated him without cause, which is interesting because theoretically then I guess that means he can claim unemployment, which how much unemployment can a person claim as far as a maximum? I have no idea. They're probably very state by state, but yeah. If it really is somewhere around half of what you were getting paid while being fired for 6 weeks or up to maybe even 6 months, that'd be crazy. it'd be also crazy for any CEO to actually claim unemployment. But it definitely feels like there should be a cause, particularly for a CEO in particular. Because clearly the cause is you lost $50 million of valuation on your stock. It is also, I think, also worth pointing out that they have made the board chairman Ryan Cohen the executive chairman, and this Ryan Cohen, I believe, is the person that the Super Stonks GameStop to the Moon Reddit thing, which now Reddit is about to fall apart and potentially be boycotted by its members. And but I believe this Ryan Cohen was the chosen leader of that whole idea, and seemed, at least on Reddit, they claimed to seem like he had actual ideas as far as how to make GameStop a successful business and not just run it into the ground, which is what the company that had acquired a controlling share of GameStop was really trying to do, was just run it into the ground. So now I guess we'll see if Ryan Cohen really has power and really can implement any of his ideas and do something with GameStop. Although I don't really know what you do with GameStop in general. Get away from all the Funko Pop nonsense and actually sell video games. Make a reason why I would want to buy video games online or in store at GameStop versus Walmart.com or Amazon.com. Like I have right now the GameStop Power Plus thing that gives me like a $5 coupon every month, but I have never, in the year that I've had it now, pretty much actually decided to buy anything from GameStop online because of the coupons or their magazine Game Informer or anything like that. They don't have deep enough sales. As an exclusive dealer that is definitely selling a lot of used games, it's kind of ridiculous that there aren't massive slick deals that are happening around used video games, that 1 week out of the year you could potentially buy something like Mario Odyssey for $7, $5, $6, and that you could play that up very well. I guess I have said in the past that if I was in charge of GameStop, you probably want to take the name game and expand it to all kinds of games. Try to get a really good deal with Hasbro to have board games on the shelf. Have Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, things like that. Probably try to get into comic books a little bit too. Make it the spot that kids want to go exclusively. Maybe put some arcade machines, some free play machines, or some of the At Legends type fake arcade games. Have them for sale, or at least have them playable. Kind of make GameStop the place where kids want to go and hang out and play games, even if they're not going to buy anything very often. Maybe get into just straight up game rentals as an idea. Like if GameStop had a Netflix type service where they were mailing discs to you like GameFly does. Like, I don't know if GameFly still exists, but if I was GameStop, I would have tried to acquire GameFly at some point. I think that's the name of the company that mails you game discs. But yeah, this is probably a little inside baseball, and we'll just have to see if GameStop can really do anything. They could definitely use a refresh too. The logo and all of that could use a new font, a new logo, a new subtitle. All of that could be very helpful as far as just making it feel fresher. This is an interesting semi bit of self-promotion. in that Video Games Chronicles is partnering with Japan Indie Expo Bit Summit. So they are going to have extensive coverage of Japan's biggest indie games event next month. Video Games Chronicle is a UK based company, so it's interesting that they're going to dip their toe on reporting from Bit Summit. And inherently, why there wasn't a lot of announcements at the Summer Games Fest probably is because some people were holding back in Japan. Japanese companies would be holding back. Japanese indie companies would be holding back for Bit Summit next month. ScumVM also is pleased to announce the full support for the PC version of the first game in the Might and Magic series, Might and Magic Book 1, The Secret of the Inner Sanctum. Let's see, 2 modes are supported: the original look and feel of the game, sound, which in the original consisted of merely the occasional beep, is not supported, and then a ScumVM exclusive enhanced mode, which uses the interface of the later Zine games, including niceties such as better character screens, auto mapping, and sound effects. It also integrates the impressive Might and Magic 1 graphics overhaul mod, which provides in better map and monster graphics. The zine.cc file is required from Might and Magic 4 or Might and Magic World of Zine. Interesting. So they're applying code from a later game to the first game in the series. That is an interesting modification, considering in particular since ScumVM has never really tried to modify any other games to my knowledge. So that is potentially a new direction that ScumVM has less and less they can do. It would make some sense that they would branch out to add more niceties. Although it certainly does cross a line too. Like, most people who are using ScumVM want the original experience. That being said, this original Might and Magic game does sound like it would be a very rough original experience if you were to play it. I think I'm gonna have to cough. Let me see if I can mute myself. Yeah. So that definitely has been what I've also felt, is that the Might and Magic series of games, not to be confused with Heroes of Might and Magic, which Heroes of Might and Magic 1, 2, and 3 are, in my opinion, somewhat playable. The original Might and Magic games, which are more dungeon crawler role-playing games, have all felt incredibly old to the point where they just didn't feel relevant enough to play. And they still may not be really relevant enough to play. But an improvement based on the 4th game in a series would potentially go a long way. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com has an article here just telling us and warning you that the Friday the 13th game will be pulled from sale when the license expires in December. This will impact both physical and digital versions of the horror title, which this is a game that had major problems with its licenses and people contesting who actually owned the rights to Friday the 13th as a name, or Jason Voorhees as a character. And yeah, since not everybody was on board, there was definitely some lawsuits threatened, if not filed. That being said, the Friday the 13th game as an asynchronous horror game had major problems anyways, because all the asynchronous horror games have problems. There's just not enough of a player base around the idea. And now it's going to be pulled forever. And yeah, I don't think that many people are going to miss it, so I'll just leave it at that. But it is always a shame when games get pulled forever. Even if you were to keep a copy of this, since it was such an online experience, you'd have to figure out a way to run local servers or custom servers, and that's going to take some reverse engineering. And then apparently a 300-pound Starfield Constellation Edition has been leaked, alongside I think several other editions have been leaked. Standard edition will be 70 pounds, $70, or 80 euros, or 70. Are these euros or pounds? Actually, well, I'd say that's probably pounds. Yeah. It seems like it's going to be $10 more expensive on the Xbox than the PC, too. And that seems like crazy. And this. And then a 104-pound premium edition on PC, and then a $114 pound on console premium edition. And then whatever this Constellation Edition, sounding way more expensive. At that price, at 300 pounds, you pretty much have to be getting an Xbox Series S or a Series X with it for that to make any sense at all. That you're buying a full-on new console. And I'd really have to question how many people need to buy a new Xbox Series X or Series S at this point. Either you have it, or you don't want it. Alright, so those were the big stories. Now let's go just through all the stories of the news. Turn on the blur. So we'll just go through all the video game news stuff. I was having trouble with the Video Game Chronicles website because my macro detected that there are actually 15 articles on page 1, and then there are 14 articles on page 2, and then there are 15 articles on page 3. So that level of inconsistency was causing my macro to crash. I guess maybe that is something that I might need to program and code for to have an exception to that error, but I probably could just also wait until Monday, and by that point it won't ever happen again, or it won't happen again for months. It's weird that since these are all effectively just like WordPress themes, it's weird in the first place that you would have a situation where there would be one less article on the second page than what would be on the first page. When you have pages on anything, it tends to be a case where it should be the same amount on anything, whatever that amount is. But yeah, I'll leave that whining at that. So I mentioned the Day of the Devs. This is basically Double Fine and I Am 8-Bit. I don't know if I Am 8-Bit actually is owned by Microsoft, but even if they wouldn't, I would have said Day of the Devs should probably retire. So they announced a game called Beastie Ball, which is animals playing like volleyball. Hyper Light Breaker, a game called Simpler Times. They showed off Viewfinder, which we already knew about. A game called Hauntini. I don't even remember seeing that trailer. Yeah, definitely while I was watching the presentations too, I probably got distracted and stopped watching at a certain point. Cart Life, they spent a lot of time talking about, and it looks like a weird game, but apparently a lot of people did respond well to it. But I think it's already out there too, so maybe it was at a game dev jam or something that was shown off. There's this Hellscape game, which is a weird roguelite, like Tony Hawk Skater combined game. So you do a lot of grinding and skating, and I think there's just a general amount of time you have in each run, and then you get currency to upgrade your skateboard, which sometimes you use as a weapon to beat up on demons. So it's not just skating. A roguelite where it was 100% skating might have been a more traditional thought, certainly. And then it being set in a hell-like world is kind of weird. Speaking of weird, there's also Henry Halfhead. They spent a lot of time on this, in which you are this half-head that jumps into objects and controls them, telling what looks like linear narrative experience with a lot of puzzling. There's this game Cocoon where you jump in and out of different worlds. So when you jump out of a world, it turns into a cocoon. You can pick up the cocoon and carry it around in the world above that world, and then you can jump back into the world, I assume. There's a game called Eat. I didn't see that one. Summerhill. Didn't see that one. This Evernights game is a half dating game, half zombie fighting game, I believe. It is a weird trailer, to say the least. Dating action game, part visual novel, part hack and slash adventure. Maybe not zombies fighting. And then your main character has like this glowing arm element. It definitely feels like a gimmick. This Eternights, not Evernights, I guess is the name of it. Then there's this game called Retro Gadgets that is like the construction of small mini electronic devices, which they're calling retro, but in a lot of ways it seems like it's brand new designs. So it's kind of a educational circuit building game is what I think it's going for. I'm not sure if there's really any programming in it at all, or if there's going to be a large focus on it being programming. In a lot of ways it's going to be like PC building simulator, but if you are a maker trying to build a circuit from scratch is I think what they're going for. Moon First Logistics is a build a robot to pick up something and then deliver it somewhere else game. Salt Sea Chronicles, I don't think I saw that one either. Now inevitably we've gone through this whole list, and I wouldn't be surprised if Gamatsu instead of Video Games Chronicle covers each of these articles and games individually. We already talked about Shadows of the Damned getting a remaster. I can't watch the video though. I'd actually like to check that video out later. Videos restricted, please check with the Google Workspace Administrator. Let's see. Oh, and clicking on that didn't do anything either. So maybe the video has been taken down, maybe my setup is just weird. We already talked about Atlas accidentally revealing its 2 Persona games. Grasshopper manufacturer having its first ever direct. Big news from the Steam Game Fest. That controversy. Zelda and Nintendo Switch topped European game industry sales in May, according to Video Games Chronicles. I'll leave that news just to the headline. Tears of the Kingdom is already the 3rd best game of the year. Friday the 13th is going to be delisted in December. It will cost $5 until then. The fact that they're even selling it for anything maybe says something. I feel like they may have claimed that it was going to be delisted before too. So and then it wasn't delisted. So maybe you shouldn't 100% trust that it actually would be delisted. Not that I would say that's a good reason to go and buy the game for $5. Let's see. Link's Awakening remake studio Grezzo's next game headlines June's Apple Arcade release. A racing game called Jet Dragon will be released next week. This is an odd combination of ladies as far as the way they're animated. It's an odd style. Jet Dragon itself looks like kind of a generic dragon racing game, flying a dragon but a racing game. And then there's some other Apple Arcade games, none of which look particularly amazing. Let's see, we already talked about a potential Zelda movie. Yeah, maybe I am lacking creativity there. Maybe somebody else could suggest what a Zelda movie would be to make it 2 hours long and interesting. Like, I assume a Zelda movie is for kids. You could certainly go a different route if you targeted at adults, but I just don't know what story you're going to tell there. I'd assume it's just going to try and tell a better version of the main narrative of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Let's see, the Summer Game Fest schedule, complete guide from Video Games Chronicles. If you want to check this out, it's potentially been updated here. It seems like there's still a lot of events going to happen throughout the weekend, all the way till Thursday the 15th. Which that's, I guess, just buckle in, because we're going to have a ton of news, announcements, and trailers of games. I don't care about the podcast. Interesting. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown's reveal had a mostly negative reception, so I guess I'm not off the norm. In that case, the 2.5D is getting far more dislikes than likes on YouTube. Let's see, are there any comments as to why? No. It's not entirely clear why the game has received such a strong negative reaction, and it doesn't show any typical triggers, often involving inclusivity that can lead to mob mentality, resulting in widespread downvoting. It is certainly telling the Video Games Chronicle, like most mainstream video game journalists, are just jumping to, oh, the reviewers and the people downvoting the video must be wrong. They must be falling into mob mentality because of inclusivity in the trailer. Although, in all fairness, this guy doesn't feel like he's from the right time, if not from the right area, for his appearance. Instead, comments under each video give a range of reasons to why the trailer doesn't appear to be appealing to many players. Some suggest the game doesn't look like a true Prince of Persia game, which, yeah, it doesn't to me. Others have said the game looks visually basic. Can't wait to tell this to drop on the PS2. Isn't it a joke's snide response? Yeah. Some have instead expressed displeasure in the way it was presented in the trailer, particularly its use of rap music. So it was rap music, yeah. One user referred to the trailer as the Fresh Prince of Persia. Nothing takes me out of the atmosphere of a game more than using modern hip-hop in a trailer. Some fans have been pointing out that the side-on viewpoint means the game looks more faithful to the original Prince of Persia game, which maybe that's the problem too, is that people really want Sands of Times. I think overall there's just a pent-up lack of interest in saying anything Prince of Persia until the Sands of Time remake comes out. See, addressing the issue of the rap music in the trailer, others have noted that the critically acclaimed Prince of Persia Warrior Within had an alt-rock main theme, which was also tonally different to the game's setting. It's going to show more at the Ubisoft Forward presentation on June 12th. One game that won't be shown at that time is the Sands of Time remake, which is still in an early stage of development. Yeah, I think a lot of the downvoting definitely comes from the fact that this is just not the Prince of Persia people wanted. But yeah, if anything, I think there is probably an argument to make the claim that they have added inclusivity in a way that doesn't really make a lot of sense by adding rap music and having a character with what looks a lot more like a modern African hairstyle or African American hairstyle than what you would have had in the time that Prince of Persia should be set in, and having a character who looks more like an African instead of a, I guess you would say, Iranian or Babylonian or Persian. Not that you're ever really looking for a lot of historical accuracy around Prince of Persia, but this does seem like this is pushing it pretty far. The side-scrolling 2.5D angle also, while it may be more accurate to the original Prince of Persia, I don't think people want that. I think they want a open world, more 3D Prince of Persia game. Like the last time they made a Prince of Persia like re-release of the original games, that didn't really sell that well. There wasn't a huge amount of hype around that. We already talked about PlayStation not attending Gamescom 2023. We already talked about the Constellation edition of Starfield. Weirdly, we really don't have that much news around Starfield, which that could be a warning signal, certainly. We are not that far away from it being released. We should probably know a little bit more. Let's see. A PlayStation VR 2 first-person shooter called Crossfire Sierra Squad releases in August. Game also coming to Steam. If you want to check that out. This one got a big reception. Sonic Superstars is going to be a new 2D game with 4-player co-op. For Sonic, maybe I shouldn't show this because it's a Japanese company, Sega. But let's see if we can get to the point. Basically, it starts off in Green Hill Zone, World 1-1, and then Sonic at the very end of World 1-1, Green Hill Zone, crosses a line and goes into a more 3D model style instead of a pixely 8-bit, 16-bit visual style. But it's still basically just 2.5D type visuals. It doesn't seem like it's promising much of a difference experience compared to the original Sonic game, which may work very well for nostalgia. It does seem like at some point you turn into these like jellyfish characters, which I don't think that's been in previous Sonic games. 4-player co-op is something different, but then you definitely just get back to the main problems of Sonic games, in that you're moving very fast and rushing towards danger that's off screen. This really does not want to load. I think this may have to do more with Twitter. Twitter was not loading any images at all. I think their file server may be broken. But yeah. I can't really deny that ever since Elon Musk bought Twitter, Twitter has had way more problems. Way more downtime. you do have this problem, certainly with Sonic, in that there's no clear leadership at Sega in charge of Sonic, obviously. There's one team that wants to make old Sonic games, and then there's one team that wants to make Sonic Frontier games. And when Sonic Frontier came out and it was very well received, and you potentially start to establish, hey, this is what Sonic's going to be going forward. It's going to be a 3D open world platforming game, and that's what it's going to be. You now have an announcement saying, nope, we're going back to the old way of doing things, and we're going to make the 2D experience, which none of those games in the past decade plus have sold well. The only one that sort of sold well was Sonic Mania, which was made by fans. The clear move here is when Sonic Frontier came out, that should have been the Mario 64 moment for Sonic. Ever since Super Mario Bros. 64, there's been very little interest in having Mario in a 2D or 2.5D side-scrolling game. They've done it once or twice, but those games have not been the main focus, and they have not sold as well. Whereas I think they are definitely trying to have their cake and eat it too. So yeah, he crosses this line, and so you can see it's just 3D models versus the 16-bit pixel models. And yeah, it's just going to look nicer while playing very much like the original Sonic games. I just think that's bad direction. I think they have to give up on that thought and just if they had announced a Sonic Frontier 2, that would have been better. If they had announced any kind of 3D Sonic game like Sonic Frontier, that would have been better for Sonic. Sonic should just go 3D, same way in Mario went 3D in Mario 64 and then just never look back, or only look back on rare occasions. Establish that the 3D Sonic concept works, and it's what they're going to commit to. But yeah, Sega has poor leadership, particularly around Sonic. It's pretty obvious. Let's see. Liza P gets a September release date, and the demo is now available. It is September 19th. I don't really know quite enough around Liza P to be hyped around it. And that is true for a lot of these games. It's that even if they are getting release dates, there's just not been a lot of information shown around a lot of these games. So, and we've seen a very consistent pattern this year in which anything that's new and that has been released this year has been pretty bad, and particularly the games that don't have a lot to show off or talk about. Redfall being a great example of that, in which they just did not put out enough advertisement and messaging to say what the game was, to perhaps even temper expectations. They may have sold a few more copies had they just said the game is like this and it's pretty bad, although you can't come out and say your game is bad, but you can certainly say it's not anywhere as good as the pre-rendered cutscenes and the commercials and trailers made it look. Remedy showed off its Alan Wake 2's first gameplay. Technically, apparently, this is the first survival horror game they've ever made. So they've gone into a different genre. I am not very optimistic, though, around Alan Wake 2, in part because I didn't really like Alan Wake 1 and didn't ever play Alan Wake's New Nightmare. But it seems to me like you've got a game that's split right down the middle in half, where you're playing one narrative as one character, Saga, I believe is her name, and then you're playing a completely separate narrative as Alan Wake, and it seems like you are going to be able to, after a certain starting point, just jump between a chapter by Alan Wake and a chapter by Saga. And yeah, I don't know if the two stories are going to interconnect much at all. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Overall, it does seem like you're still using your flashlight to make enemies vulnerable, but it seems like you're more fighting a more varied collection of enemies and not just generic shadows in Alan Wake 2. But I don't know if there's really enough of a story there that would interest me. Like I don't recall really loving the story of Alan Wake 1. And I definitely don't love the idea that if you play Alan Wake 2, you're going to end up running into a story that also connects to Control and the game that they made even before Alan Wake, which I think there'll be maybe a small reference to that game. I can't even remember the name of it. Spider-Man 2 has a release date. They also showed off that they were fighting Venom, and they specifically said during the show that this Venom is not Eddie Brock. I wouldn't be surprised if the Venom that they fight once they get the Venom suit off of Peter Parker is just Venom, and that there isn't a human host in that case at all. Pre-orders are going to be June 16th, and it's going to be released for the PS5 on October 20th. I also wouldn't be surprised if you only spend about 5 minutes fighting Venom and spend the vast majority of the game in the Venom suit as Peter Parker. Yeah, it definitely feels like this narrative is going to be fairly rehashed as far as what the story is, but I mean, that's fine. I don't think we're going to have a character like Mr. Negative that most people don't even know showing up like in Spider-Man 1. I think this is going to be a much more traditional Peter Parker Venom story, with the slight variation that Miles Morales is also involved. John Carpenter has got his name attached to a game called Toxic Commando, which is a new zombie first-person shooter. Overall, it looks like it's kind of a gory, maybe a little silly zombie shooter with a lot of zombies in it, a lot more than you might expect. But on this original teaser trailer, it doesn't seem to show much of anything else or anything new. You see a lot of zombies, you see a lot of guns, and you see some kind of alien zombie that can shoot back, which is maybe a bit innovative. And then they're in a car that seems like there'll be some sequences where you're on a car shooting zombies. This may be an attempt at doing Days Gone a second time without the creator of Days Gone messing it up or causing controversy. Some of this looks really interesting, but a non-stop zombie shooting fest would get very repetitive and boring eventually, depending on how long the game is. Although in all fairness, Left 4 Dead works pretty well, and so this might very well be something like Left 4 Dead, where your goal is to get from point A to point B in a bunch of small scenarios, and it's more multiplayer focused. The Like a Dragon Gaiden has gotten a new trailer, an official release date. This is a Yakuza spinoff. So now it's called The Man Who Erased His Name. And it's going to be released November 9th for the PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, and the Xbox One and PC. And what's interesting about this is that my plugin should have shortened this text, because my plugin isn't just shortening headlines, it's shortening the text anywhere on the file. So there must be an extra space or something about the formatting, possibly because there are hyperlinks. The text isn't getting shortened because there are different hyperlinks to different places. Yeah. I've never personally gotten into the Like a Dragon games, or several games like a Dragon, so this Yakuza spin-off game didn't really catch my attention. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will release in early 2024 on 2 discs. This is the continuation of Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. They showed off some characters, and I'm sure if you had played Final Fantasy VII, you'd probably be more hyped around the characters. That's probably about all I could say about it. I think this is the point where they get outside of the small starting area in Final Fantasy VII into more of an open world area, and I know that was a big reveal originally in Final Fantasy VII, but I think it was pretty expected for anybody who had already played Final Fantasy VII. And then maybe there's some interesting twists in the story that were teased at in the trailers. It sounded like there might be an interesting twist there, but maybe I'm misinterpreting what was said. Is this even supposed to be Cloud? Because I'm not even sure this really looks like the Cloud from the first Final Fantasy VII Remake game, which I feel like that was called Remake. So it's going to be called Remake, Rebirth, and what? Revolution? Something like that. I bet it's something that starts with an R. Let's see, the first Warzone 2 Season 4 trailer shows off a new map called Vondel, if you want to check out that trailer. The mobile game Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is getting a closed beta on Android. This was the other game that they advertised. I feel like this trailer is probably deceptively polished compared to what it really would look like. There's a real danger in watching any of these trailers because the Summer Game Fest themselves may just try and claim all the trailers as their own. Even though trailers and ad copy are not copyrightable, it doesn't stop some nonsense like that happening. This, as a mobile game, just looks like any other RPG game, really. Anything kind of nice graphics, but that's about it. Let's see. Quantic Dream announced its indie label called Spotlight in its first 2 releases. What was the second release that they announced? Under the Waves was the first one. And then Lisfangia, the Time Shift War. This was a very weird name, and they even said the name Lisfanga a couple of times in the trailer, probably just so people knew how to pronounce it. It's apparently a lady who can go back and rewind time and then fight alongside clones of herself. There have been more simplified versions of this idea that have come out in the past couple years, but this one seems to have been programmed particularly well and much more fast-paced, thought-out process as far as how would you take that gameplay mechanic and make it actually work. Where in the past you've seen almost turn-based, very simplistic versions of the idea that you could make a clone of yourself and rewind time and fight alongside that person. Here's a kind of example. You've got an enemy here the clone is running after, an enemy here that the clone is running after, and then an enemy here that the original version is running after. This implies to me that the enemies will overwhelm you and kill you in like 1 or 2 hits, if you don't have a clone to take them on, and you may only really be able to rewind time when you die. So it might be a little frustrating of a game too if you're just constantly dying, even if you feel like you shouldn't have to die the first time to succeed. Annapurna Interactive will be holding its next game showcase in late June, which I guess that's an announcement for an announcement. And then they showed off a Twisted Metal TV clip showing off Sweet Tooth, which was being voiced by Will Arnett, although not acted by Will Arnett. And Will Arnett was yet another actor who was showing up, him and Nicolas Cage. So yeah, that was what led me certainly to feel like this Summer Games Fest in particular was a little too Hollywood for its own good. Is that you're bringing on these celebrity actors on stage, and then you're not really bringing on too many other people. You brought on Ben Brode, and then Ben Brode announced, I think, a new mode for Marvel Snap, but I don't think it's out yet. And I didn't catch when it is coming out. But it sounds like they're going to make potentially a completely different way to play Marvel Snap, which I might appreciate quite a bit, frankly, if there's just a different way to play with the same cards. But that may very well divide the player base quite a bit. I don't think too much to really say around this other than, yeah, Twisted Metal still looks really weird, and the trailer did give me the impression, because they're basically having a full-on conversation as this guy, as Sweet Tooth, is holding his head against a cracked slot machine screen for like 5 minutes, and he's just not even trying to get away from having his head held onto the broken glass. Yeah, it feels like it's going to be a lot more comedic than it could have potentially been. They're not going to take it serious, and you look at Sweet Tooth here as a character, and that definitely looks like it's going to be fairly comedic. Let's see. And then for Fortnite fans, I don't know how many of them still exist, Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3, The Wilds got a trailer. When is it releasing? I'm not sure. Thursday, maybe? The Wilds is kind of set in this dinosaur forested area that they've redone the map for in the center of the map. And then it has the first generation Optimus character, not the second generation Beast Wars Optimus character, which you would think if it were in a forested area with dinosaurs, it would make a lot more sense to be the second generation Optimus. I forget his name. Optimus Primal, I believe, versus Optimus Prime. Yeah. And let's see. The thing here with Steam, I'm probably going to need to stop paying any attention to the Steam front page. We've got games on sale, but no big sale that they seem to be promoting. They have slightly changed the storefront now where it says Summer Spotlight instead of saying Summer Game Fest. So, yeah. There's not a lot on this page still, other than just the admittance that there's a lot of presentations presentations still to happen. Alright, let's go through the Gemetsu news very quickly. So Remnant 2 launches July 25th. A new trailer highlights the cooperative gameplay. If anything, this might be a case where YouTube is to be blamed, because I can't really blame Twitter now in this case. Although I did update my Firefox. In fact, I updated Firefox, and then it told me to update Firefox again, that the newer version is available. So there might be a reason there. But yeah. We now have a release date for Remnant 2. Sonic Superstars. The thing that really needs to happen here is the camera probably needs to zoom out a little bit further the faster you go, or have the characters further back to the left. It doesn't feel like there's too much different though, or anything that new around this Superstars. Honkai Star Rail for the PS5 launches in Q4 of 2023. This was one of the 3 Japanese games during the Summer Game Fest. I don't think the trailer for Honkai Star Rail was particularly great, though. Liza P delayed to September 19th. Notice how they call it a delay instead of just announcing a release date, which is probably more accurate because Gemetsu tends to be more accurate. Oh, I guess I was wrong. Sandland was also shown during the Summer Games Fest, and this is a Japanese game from the creator of Dragon Ball. I'm still not particularly hyped around Sandland. It just looks like a very weird, almost Ghibli-esque game in the cutscenes, and just a weird character in general. It is definitely from the creator of Dragon Ball, not the more nostalgic memories we may have around Dragon Ball Z, where most of the characters are human looking. In Japan, almost certainly this game will sell very well, at least in the first couple weeks until it gets reviewed. The Annapurna Interactive Showcase set for June 29th. Throne and Liberty has an announced trailer, which, okay, I'll leave it at that. A Warhaven launches in early access this fall. There was a 4X space simulation game designed to only take an hour that I heard about. I don't know the name of it though, but I definitely want to see if I can find that game, because that would definitely be something to pay attention to. A good 4X game that only takes an hour to play might be down my alley. A game called Party Animals is coming out for the Xbox One and Series and PC on September 20th. It is, I think, going to be somewhat close to like Human Fall Flat, in that you're just going to have some wonky characters doing some wonkiness. Of course, it could also just be nothing. It says it has single player, but I think it probably is going to be mostly multiplayer focused, so I'm not going to put it on the fault list, but I will make a YouTube short around it. See, Crash Team Rumble has announced a Season 1 roadmap, which, okay. I don't really know what Crash Team Rumble is. I didn't see any trailer around this. Online multiplayer. Power up your crew. Seems almost like a tower defense game. I don't think that's exclusively what it is. I think it might be more player versus player experience, but yeah. Yeah, it's a player versus player, team versus team type game of some sort. The Alan Wake gameplay footage we talked about. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 launches this winter. Let's see, do we have release date around this? Not yet. Just generic winter. Let's see, Toxic Commando. Apparently it's going to be an Epic Game Store exclusive. Baldur's Gate 3 Lord Inver Gortash trailer. Available if you want to check that out. For each of these announcements, I need to figure out what's going on. I don't know why I've made these exceptions before for games that are in early access. They should not be on the wish list if they're in early access. Should be on the fall list, even if they are very positively reviewed. Spider-Man 2 launches October 20th. PS5 exclusive. This game called Power World for PC launches in early access in January of 2024. This is basically characters that look extremely much like Pokemon, but they have guns, and honestly I don't know if they really play it as a game anything really like a Pokemon game. In a lot of ways it seems like they are just making things as close to a Pokemon looking without getting sued. Like this character here, this looks very, very similar to a Pokemon Company character. Although arguably it also looks like an anthropomorphic flower, so maybe there's no copyright to be had around that. The thing here though is if Nintendo wanted to sue this company, there's a lot of characters here that look very similar to Pokemon, and the multitude of similarities there I think would have Nintendo win in a jury trial or even a judgment by a judge's trial. Whereas if they had just copied like one Pikachu like character and changed him quite a bit, in particular their Pikachu character, where is he? Come on, I saw him. There it is. Like, this is your Pikachu character. He is way different from Pikachu, so you would have gotten away with that one. Fine. And if you had not copied any of the other characters, you would have been fine. But unless they know something that I don't know, this sounds very much like there's a lawsuit incoming on this. On top of it, just doesn't really feel like it appeals to somebody who's a Pokemon fan. I don't think real Pokemon fans are saying, I want Pokemon but with guns. Meanwhile, there's several other Pokemon-esque clones out there that are going in more kid-friendly directions that make more sense. A game called The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria adds a PS5 and Xbox Series versions and has been delayed to the fall. This seems to me like it is a game where you're going to do a lot of mining as dwarfs. I'm not sure if I really understand what the game is other than that. It looks like it is kind of just a mining, almost like Dungeon Keeper game, possibly. But then there's also action and fighting going on here. Yeah, I just don't really know what this kind of game is. Base building, rebuild, and explore, mine ores, and jewelry. Let's see, we already talked about the Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis closed beta set for June 8th through the 28th. A game called Banisher's Ghost of New Eden launches in late 2023. It's an RPG game. don't think I saw anything about this one. Looks like it might be interesting, or it could just be very standard RPG. From Don't Nod. What has Don't Nod also done? Life is Strange 2. Life is Strange, yeah. Don't Nod's the makers of Life is Strange. That does not inspire a lot of confidence, for sure. Like a Dragon launches November 9th. Or Like a Dragon Guiding the Man Who Erased His Name is the 9th. The game Under the Waves launches August 29th. Guess I should have potentially seen if there was a link to Like a Dragon. Whoops. Oh well. A game called Fae Farm launches September 8th for the Switch and PC. Fae Farm has you playing as fairies and doing the whole Stardew Valley stuff. It looks kind of cutesy and kid friendly, but it also looks like there's very little unique to say about it. A grand strategy game called Star Trek Infinite has been announced for PC and Mac. You can see from these graphics this is definitely playing into the next generation area, although I am not 100% sure what they mean by grand strategy. And this teaser trailer really didn't explain much. You see the slight images, you see that you're fighting against the Borg, and definitely kind of looks like a different kind of Borg. Like, I think if I was to guess, this is a Borg cube that is way bigger than your average Borg cube that constructs other cubes. Then it all zooms out and shows the Alpha Quadrant of Star Trek, basically. But yeah, that's all they really tease. So who knows how that plays, and who knows what's really going to happen there. The hack and slash action game Lysfangia, the Time Shift Warrior, was announced for PC. So here we are in a very unique position. Since I'm going to make these YouTube shorts, should I do something different for these announcements compared to all the other announcements for games that came out on Steam? Or should it just all be mixed together? And what kind of labeling and branding should I do? It probably would save me a little bit to do some different kind of labeling. Instead of just saying check out this PC game as the title, if I had a whole collection of Summer Game Fest announcements and I put out all those videos as quickly as possible, that kind of would make some sense. I don't know how many shorts really I'd end up making there, but maybe 25, 30 games. But I don't know if it's really worth making the special effort anyways, though. I'll have to think about that. Immortals of Avium Colossal Assault gameplay trailer is available. This trailer in particular, which I can't play, does seem to take the game in a slightly different direction, in that there's this like giant Colossus type character that they are getting onto and swinging with magical ropes to get on platforms to work their way to the Colossal. That does slightly change what the experience looks like, that there will be more vertical movement than you might have expected, but mostly it still seems like it is a fairly fast-paced first-person shooter where you're shooting magic out of your hands instead of guns, which is something different, certainly. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launches early 2024. The turn-based RPG Beastie Ball was announced for PC. Yeah, we talked about Beastie Ball before, but we didn't really look at it. Yeah, a turn-based kind of volleyball game with animal characters. Let's see, a ghostly adventure game called Haunty, announced for consoles and PC. Let's see. Probably should spend the extra effort. If I draw kind of a dividing line on the YouTube shorts I've already set up, I only have about 6 right now. But if I draw that dividing line as far as what's being reported by Video Games Chronicles or Gamatsu, and just highlight what's being on Steam, I could dump out a lot of shorts very quickly. I probably should have done it yesterday, honestly, come to think of it. And then like just flood my YouTube channel with those announcements, but put Steam Fest announcements. Although I'm not sure whether I'm adding a lot of extra information there. Here's the skateboarding roguelike action game Hell's Gate being announced for PC. Which, yeah. Again, we didn't really look at all the screenshots available here. In other ways, I kind of wish I got rid of the Hell theme and just had a skating game. And got rid of the beat 'em up part 2. I think there's enough interest in just a skating game alone to not have to spice it up with like rogue light nonsense and beating up of enemies. Let's see, Cocoon adds a PS4 and PS5 versions. Previously it was for the Xbox One and Series and PC. This is the first time I've seen it. Yep. This is one of those games that is definitely better when you see it in action versus the screenshots. This is from the lead gameplay designer of Limbo and Inside, and they're selling it heavily on that, which is a pretty poor sales pitch considering the game design for Limbo and Inside are pretty simplistic. You walk from the left to the right in Limbo and Inside. You do some platforming, you move some objects, and you do a little bit of puzzling, but it's hardly a super complicated gameplay design. The narrative of Limbo is much more interesting. The narrative of Inside is not that interesting. It is, I guess, nice to see somebody not just repeating the same concept a third time that was involved with Limbo and Inside, but I imagine I think it was called like Dead Boy Studios or something, the company that actually makes Limbo. Here, let's just click on Inside and find out the name of it. Playdead Studios. Yeah, I imagine Playdead is literally just going to make another game like Limbo and Inside. Let's see if they've got any upcoming releases to announce. Nope. There's Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which they're also suggesting. Interesting suggestion, I guess. Let's see, a story-driven puzzle adventure game called Summerhill was announced for PC. I guess if I was going to specifically try and make YouTube shorts around each of the Summer Game Fest announcements, I shouldn't curate anything at that point. And this is kind of a great example of a game that probably I wouldn't make a YouTube short on because it's not that interesting in its stills. But in this case, I think I will. I also think I'd probably use a very generic labeling here. So 2023 big summer announcements, big game summer announcements, PC game summer announcements, something like that. Here's the half dating sim visual novel, half survival beat 'em up game. It definitely feels kind of like two games just squashed together, and like there's a gimmick going on here. Noticeably, Japanese and Korean are below the fold, even though they both have full audio support. This does seem like a weird attempt to make a game somehow for a Western audience in a very Asian Eastern style. A story-driven adventure game called Saltsea Chronicles announced for the PS5, Switch, and PC. Yeah. I guess I do have this slight concern or hesitancy of success because, yeah, I obviously should make these YouTube shorts and put them out, but I also, for some reason, have a bit of, like, anxiety, I guess is the word you'd say, around YouTube shorts becoming super popular and me gaining 100 or 200 subscribers in the course of a week, or even getting a ton of views. And I don't know where that's coming from because I've already gotten a lot of subscribers, not really relative to successful people on YouTube, but I have like 630 subscribers. I have hundreds of thousands of views, but yeah, maybe I'm just confusing potential excitement with anxiety, or maybe I've just gotten to the point where I can no longer even enjoy excitement and can only be anxious. But yeah, I gotta pull the trigger and pull that idea off. So yeah, over this weekend we're gonna get a flood of announcements, and I probably will try and commit to looking for more news and more announcements throughout the next week or two around new games, making YouTube shorts around them as soon as possible. The game Yes Your Grace Snowfall has been announced for Xbox One and Series, Switch, and PC. I don't fully know which game is Yes Your Grace. I feel like this was one of these you're in charge of a city and you make all the decisions games, and this is a spin-off of that. But yeah, I do think I recognize the series. Never fully caught my attention though. Sludge Life 2 launches June 27th. The demo is available right now. I didn't realize we were anywhere far enough away from Sludge Life 1 for there to be a sequel, but whatever. I guess there is. Has been enough time. Let's see, here's a different screenshot around Shadows of Damned remastered. Well, what platforms? Yeah, I guess that's the question I want to know, is what platforms would it be on? Shadows of the Damned is one of the earliest games. Yeah, June 2011. So you're talking close to a 15-year remake. But yeah, they don't have a Steam page. Seems like there's a couple of screenshots. That is probably a great example, though, of what I would like to see in remakes, is people giving games that they could have been popular a second chance even though they weren't popular, compared to just remakes of super popular games. Which, by the way, DF Retro did a follow-up on some of the remakes of games that have come out relatively recently, and they did make a specific point to mention that there has basically been no patches or updates for the Dead Space remake. It was obviously rushed out as a remake to compete against Callisto Protocol. Callisto Protocol failed miserably, and it has gotten several updates, but not enough to get people to go back and try it again. And Dead Space has just been basically the same buggy mess since launch, and it seems like they have no interest in fixing it, which seems to indicate they probably aren't going to have a lot of interest in continuing the Dead Space series. As far as remaking the other games, if they even need remakes. I'm not sure Dead Space ever needed a remake in the first place. But there was some hope that they were going to go in a different direction and continue the series, and I don't know if I really have any hope left for that. A game called Wizard with a Gun launches in 2023 for the PS5, Xbox Series, PC, and then later for the Switch. Let's see. They don't have a Steam page. Looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter game. Not sure that there's anything else particularly special around that, other than like the title says, it's a wizard with a gun. The Talos Principle 2 has a gameplay trailer. I would have assumed I've already set up to make a YouTube short around the Talos Principle 2, but you know what? It doesn't matter. There's now a new trailer anyways, and during this summer Game Fest and big events like this, I think making redundant shorts makes a lot of sense. Devolver Digital, Gabe Krizili, Max Bosch, and Bennett Foddy all announced this game called Baby Steps, which looks to be more like a 3D co-op clone game, where the character you're controlling will fall over if you don't hit all of the buttons very carefully to walk. I don't feel like it's particularly a game anybody really is going to want to play. And just to throw out my own opinion, it's tagged as a walking simulator, and it literally, I think, is a walking simulator in the sense that you are simulating the actions of walking. But yeah, I don't know if there's any bigger twist than that. Human Fall Flat 2 has been announced for PC. So, obviously that should get a YouTube short. I don't know. As an online co-op game, though, yeah, it's not one to really put on the fall list. Persona 3, Persona 5 leak, we already talked about. None of the images seem to be working from Twitter. Dragon Quest Champions launches June 13th in Japan. Which I don't think that was announced at the Summer Game Fest. Zytrus demo launches June 15th in Japan. We might get to the point now we're going to get some more Japanese announcements. Tekken 8's closed network test is set for the 21st through the 24th on the PS5 and the 28th through the 31st on PS5 and Xbox Series and PC. Which, let's see, clicking on that gets us to this Tekken 8 demo. See, this is where the generic labeling will make sense. If I say 2023 big summer game announcements, PC game announcements, then Tekken still falls under that description pretty well. And then Assassin's Creed Mirage has a Return to Roots developer diary if you want to watch that from Komatsu. And that is the end of the Komatsu articles. I'm going to leave this interstitial tab open as a marker, and then that's going to bring us to the game developer articles, which I think we'll go through fairly quickly. We already talked about Friday the 13th being delisted. Apparently game subscription interest is fizzling out, argues an analyst, which, okay, I can see how that's the case. You have an example here of Microsoft games. I think all of these are Microsoft Xbox Game Pass games, and I think at least a couple of these are pretty big flops too. I question though what would have to happen to convince people to stop the payments on the auto renewal on game subscription services. Though the economy is pretty bad, so I can see a lot of people doing that. But at a certain point, I imagine most people will just stay with the subscription services. As long as they don't pull a Netflix and actively anger their user base, I imagine a lot of people will just say, oh well, Xbox Game Pass is still a decent enough thing that I'm not going to bother to cancel it. We already talked about this controversy. Let's see. Sega of America's staff also says that their employer is undermining their unionization efforts. I bet they are. Aegis is calling Sega's loyal player base to convince the developer to stay neutral on its union vote on June 16th, I think is what it says. Allied Employees Guild improving Sega, which is apparently the title for a Communication Workers of America Local 1995-10. So yeah, CWA trying to unionize a lot of United States Western video game companies, and they may actually see some success in the next couple of years. GameDeveloper.com's opinion is that the Summer Game Fest makes a surprisingly light splash again. Something seemed off about the Summer Games Fest. I felt like it was just a little too Hollywood. I felt like there was a lot of trailers, certainly. Mortal Kombat 1, somehow we didn't even talk about, and they had footage of that. Mortal Kombat 1 in particular is going in a weird direction in that they are giving you assist characters. So now when you pick a character like Sonya Blade, you can potentially pick Scorpion as the assist, and they'll come in and assist and do an attack. So they are fairly drastically changing the way Mortal Kombat fighting is going to work in this rebooted series. Otherwise, I think it is just generically going to be the events of Mortal Kombat 1. They're going to change the stories a little bit and change the characters' relations a little bit, but I imagine it's going to feel very simple, unless they just add a whole bunch of like combat crypt or some other gameplay mechanics. So far, we haven't seen anything that seems too weird around Mortal Kombat 1 or any microtransaction nonsense. But yeah, a big technical change in the fighting game, and that might be a step too far in itself. And yeah, a long list here of games. Like, they showed off a lot of trailers, maybe too many trailers in general. It seems like maybe rumors of the Final Fantasy announcements leaked out, and that may have blown their surprise somewhat. I think part of the problem may have been that Jeff Keighley was on stage pretty much 100% of the time, and there was no secondary presenter to throw to or anything like that. It probably would have been helpful to have a secondary presenter present a game, or even have a second person standing next to Jeff Keighley always, so that you may have just a hype man help hype up the games. There's no big announcements, no hardware announcements. So, yeah. It may just been a little weird for too many trailers in a row or to happen. Maybe there needed to be a musical break here and there, or just more talking in between a few of the trailers. It definitely felt like it was just trailer after trailer after trailer. And yeah, overall, this is all just advertising, nothing else to it. A former UK Chancellor's advisory firm is assisting with the blocked Activision Blizzard deal. The former UK Chancellor George Osborne has been a partner of Robbie Warsaw since April 2021. That sounds like that's very inside baseball. It really doesn't mean much at all. I think there was also a ruling that said Activision can help Microsoft in its appeal to the UK CM blocking the acquisition, whereas arguably otherwise the Activision couldn't have been involved in the legal procedures, which that doesn't seem right, that you would be uninvolved in your own acquisition. Here's that story. A UK tribunal is going to allow Activision Blizzard support in the Microsoft CMA appeal. Activision Blizzard gets to tag in and help Microsoft get the UK approval to continue their merger. I don't really see why they would be stopped, since they have a literal interest in the proceedings. Alright, let's do this. Steam Fall, let's clean up really quickly. Let's see, Gore Screaming Show, rated very positively. Is this an adult game though? One scary clown monster, it says. It's a very positive visual novel from the looks of it. But I kind of want to say no. But I don't really have a good reason to say no, so I'm just going to put it on the wish list since it does follow the rules. It has over 30 reviews. It's rated very positively, 98% positively. Mob Rule clearly tells me that it should be on the wish list, even though I may never, very possibly will never buy the game and wouldn't want to play it. I am still reconsidering how many visual novels I should play too, since visual novels in particular tend not to have a lot of interaction to them. If I am literally just playing a visual novel and reading every single screen, that I have to be extra critical to add my own artistic input to it, so I'm not just, you know, acting as a full replacement and infringing on copyright of somebody. And I want to, regardless of copyright, I want to have creative input on the games I cover. I don't want to just be a voice reading out what somebody else wrote. I'm not trying to do Audible. Gordian Rooms 1, A Curious Heritage. Is this a visual novel? I mean, a VR game. No, it isn't. So, okay, that too goes on the wish list. Follows the rules. Gordian Quest is very positive. Is it an early access? No. Is it an online PvP game? It says it has online PvP. I'm not sure if that means you have to play it in PvP. It also says a single player. Well, I'm going to put it on the wish list. Well, we may end up putting a lot of things on the wish list. Gord from Team 17 has to stay on the fall list. It doesn't have a release yet. Although anything that says 2023, by the time we're on January 1st, 2024, will start to get rejected. Good pizza, great pizza. Generally, I would say no to a cooking game, but I am a big fan of pizza, so I'm going to make an exception here. Good Night Night. I think we could probably say no to this. It does have over 30 reviews and is 86% positive. But I just don't think I see enough here that I would want to play, and Souls-like combat scares me away, so I'm going to say no to that. Good Morning only has 15 reviews. More, so we'll take that off the fall list. Just not relevant enough. Gooberries has only 4 reviews, so we can take that off the fall list. Gongo has only 1 review, so we can take that off the fall list. Golfinite. I think I can say no to this. I could give it more time, but this golfing sim does not look like the kind of game I'd really want to play. Golf Masters is not relevant. Arguably, maybe golf in general is not relevant. I heard there was another controversy around golf, but I don't think it has anything to do with video games. I think it has to do with the PGA in Saudi Arabia funding PGA. So now we're at all the new games on Steam, including adult games. Let's put some of these on the fall list. That one can go into the fall list. King of Fate. I think I would say nope to this, even though it is rated kind of good. Yggdrasil. Now these are the games that I would just make a standard YouTube short around. So I'm going to have to separate it out and like move just the ones that are special into probably a different window on Firefox. I guess that would make the most sense. Actually, I could probably just run the macro and it probably would just work anyways, as long as I start the macro at the right spot, because it starts on the right side and works its way to the left side of tabs. I think that's how it works, at least. I should know how my own macro that I programmed works, but yeah, that would be asking too much to remember. And that, no, the right response there is I'm just too forgetful. This Rise of Jericho I'm going to put on the fault list, but I don't think it would make a good short. Let's see. I want to burn through all this. This is yet another 4-hour stream, which, yeah, definitely don't want them this long. Is this an adult game? English and Chinese, I suspect not. Doesn't have any mature content warning. So it's just a RPG maker game with little, I guess, moe vampire girls, anime girls. So I'm going to just say no to that. Say no to that. Avia Corporation. Looks too much like a sim for my taste. Nobody's Dilemma. Doesn't seem like it has quite visual polish that I would want to see. Let's see. Fairy Biography 4 Affair. This one has an adult patch for free. It's all Japanese audio, English subtitles. So I assume this is CGI, kind of Chinese looking or Asian looking ladies with a gameplay mechanic that really isn't connected in any way at all. You just assume here that she would not be wearing this shirt in the adult patch, or this skirt in the adult patch, or this shirt in the adult patch. They've really just come back and painted over all the nudity that you would see in the adult patch. And clearly that's the only value in this game, is that they are trying to sell it on sex and have you play what is just a terrible mobile phone game instead. So yeah, not quality, certainly. Super Archer. Yeah, there might be something there. I'll give that a chance, even though it looks like a mobile game. Generally, if a mobile game is in widescreen, that seems like they've put at least a decent amount of effort into making a PC version that makes sense. Yeah, I was just setting up a monitor to plug in my cell phone to, and noticeably if I plug it into my battery bank, right when I turn the brightness up to 96%, it will flicker and reset because there wasn't enough current coming from the battery bank to the monitor. But when I plugged it into the wall plug, it worked perfectly fine, so that's not super surprising. There is still some improvements I think Android has to make as far as plugging in a cell phone to a monitor, whether you're using Samsung DeX or just mirroring of the screen. Like ideally you would just want mirroring of the screen always, but it doesn't do a good job of stretching out the screen to fit the resolution of the external monitor. It just tries to copy the same resolution and orientation that your phone would be at. So you end up having to potentially rotate your phone to get the screen on the external monitor to be at a more landscape resolution. Otherwise, the monitor I got surprisingly supports FreeSync. So that's like the first device that I've ever purchased that supports FreeSync. And it would just be a good monitor to have to plug into my computer. So if I do need to buy another third monitor, I think I'd buy that. It is kind of small at like 15 inches instead of 30 inches. But 3 of those side by side. Although in all fairness, it would actually be a mess to try to use them, even 2 of them side by side, because they have plugs on the side of them, both sides, and buttons on both sides. And I bet if I started to really try and use them, I feel like this Grey Hill incident was either in early access or they've released it multiple times now. Because I've seen this game before. Definitely. I forgot what I was talking about. I was talking about the new monitor I got, but yeah, it looks like it's a decent thing for an extra monitor that you want to be kind of portable. Probably not a good solution if you wanted 3 monitors on. This looks like this might have been in an adult game too. That being said, it doesn't actually seem like there is any adult content. Just kind of weird. Almost like that cartoon reboot style 3D CGI. It's rough to say the least. I'm gonna say no to that. It does seem like we may not run into too many adult games today, which I'm okay with that, really. I just want to finish fairly quickly today anyways, since we've already gone pretty long. And since I've realized that I have extra work to do. Also, if this goes too long, I'm gonna have to run to the bathroom, and I don't want that to happen. So let's just hurry. I kind of wish it was a touchscreen though. The monitor is very flat and feels like a touchscreen, so it's kind of a shame it isn't a touchscreen. I think it may have a speaker built into it, but the Samsung DeX actually doesn't put the audio out for some reason. So it plays audio out of my phone instead of playing the audio. Here we have an adult game. Instead of playing the audio out to the monitor, even though it does have a headphone jack. But when you have the screen mirroring happening, the audio does seem to play through the monitor, but it sounds terrible. Alright, we have a game here that I don't know if this is a visual novel, like a kinetic visual novel, or what. It says it's an adventure-style visual novel with princesses and strange creatures that you have to bang. It's called Once a Porn a Time, and you have like Tinkerbell named as Tinkerbell in this flat 2D animation style. This is basically Rule 34 Disney princess, Snow White. I don't know who Emmy here is supposed to be, though, as a character. In all fairness, Snow White and Tinkerbell from Peter Pan are not Disney properties. It does have just kind of a different art style. The problem with the different art style, though, I'd say, is that it just doesn't really have a lot of visual appeal. Let's see. Seems like you can custom the clothes and the hairstyles of your characters and decorate your office. So there are some options there, but I don't know if the story has branching choices, although it does seem like it. It says it's going to take 10 hours to finish. And so, see if I can show anything here. The problem here is it's just not a very good art style as far as titillation goes. Like, it feels like it's just a kind of big head watercolored art style with some different kind of proportions, very hourglass figure, small waist. And here you can see this kind of bug-like alien creature that I don't know if that really makes any sense there as a character. And then here's Snow White over here. It's just not really the kind of art style I think that works for an adult game. Like, perhaps because it's kind of a rudimentary style of drawing with markers, it kind of comes off like it is potentially something that was drawn by a 16-year-old or something, particularly when you're going after characters, when you're drawing characters like Tinkerbell and Snow White. That also comes off as fairly kid focused too. And so yeah, there's definitely some awkwardness you could feel there. Secret Planet doesn't look like anything. Yeah, and that's before you even get to kind of the assumption that you would make that Snow White and Tinkerbell probably are 16 to 18 years old at most in the depictions of their stories. This South Scrimshaw game looks weird. Richly illustrated experimental visual novel written in the style of a nature documentary. Basically not doing prologues. Coda. I'll put this on the fall list, but I'm not going to make a short around it. It doesn't visually look good enough. Rushmore, I think we can say no to. True Driver. Looks like nothing. Moon 001 looks like nothing. So yeah, we had like 3 adult games this Friday, which feels like there should be more. Feels like there's maybe more of a focus on the Summer Game Fest. Maybe the adult game publishers decided not to put it out during the Summer Game Fest. Maybe Valve is just not publishing adult games during the Summer Game Fest. It wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a big event happen on Steam and then all of a sudden adult games barely get released or don't get released at all during that time. We'll keep an eye out certainly on Monday as far as how many adult games were potentially released over the weekend. Age of Fear total. I don't think I'd say yes to this either. And so that gets to the end of the show. Alright, well, maybe we'll be a little bit better off next week, but I imagine it's just going to be a long haul of 4-hour streams for the next week or two. That's going to be it for this one, though. Thanks to everybody who chatted in the chat box, whatever it's called. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, so that helps me with YouTube. If you want to support me even further, there's a bunch of links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching.